My name is Johong. After the school beauty Kelly rejected my love confession, I brought her best friends Bella and Tina back home. Johong and Bella frowned even more. Bella put down her chopsticks, glared at the woman, and asked, "Auntie, who are you?" Chapter 66. You dare to bully my child? You are so brave. Auntie? Who are you talking to, little girl? Ask her yourself, who am I? Tina, who was standing beside her. She was so angry that she seemed to be unable to breathe. Bella looked at Tina, raised her chin, and asked her about the identity of this woman. She is my father's ex-wife, the one who kicked me out of the house. Tina lowered her head, as if she recalled the saddest time of her life. During that time, I really didn't want to live anymore, and my mind was full of thoughts of suicide. Hey, stop spitting blood at me. How did it become your home? That's my home. It's understandable that I kicked you out. Why are you still feeling wronged? The woman's voice became louder and louder, and even a little piercing, which annoyed the guests at the next table. Johong immediately understood who the woman in front of him was. He had heard Tina talk about this person before. With his own son, he drove Tina out of the house. Tina's life by her own efforts. Johong opened his narrowed eyes, stared at the woman in front of him, and slowly said, "Old lady, we need to eat. If you have something to do, can you please go away? I can't eat if you are here." Who are you talking about, little bastard? The woman was so angry that she rolled up her sleeves, revealing her fat arms, as if she was going to punish Johong. Johong tilted his head and stood up. His tall stature was 2 heads taller than the woman's. His muscular chest was like a wall in front of the woman. The woman was stunned, as if she didn't expect Johong to be so strong. But the next second, she still refused to give in, put her hands on her waist and shouted, "What? You still want to hit me? Come on. Hit me here." This arrogant and unreasonable look attracted the attention of many people in the hotel. It was impossible for Johong to really hit anyone, but to be honest, he really wanted to punch her now. Tina quickly reached out her hand, pulled Johong's arm, and whispered, "Johong, calm down. Don't be angry." Johong exhaled a breath of foul air, slowly sat down, picked up the chopsticks, and prepared to ignore the woman. But the woman didn't intend to stop there. She continued to look at Tina and said, "Okay, Tina, now you have friends to help you, right? You're hanging out with these shady friends all day long. What would your mother think if she saw you? You're such an unfilial person." Snapped. Tina slammed the table hard. Her face turned even redder. She raised her eyes, gritted her teeth, and glared at her angrily. "What right do you have to say that about my mother? I have nothing now. What else do you want? Are you going to kill me? Hey, you ungrateful bastard. I'm only saying good things for your own good. How come you can't tell the difference between good words and bad words? Really? This is what children without parents are like. So uneducated." Tina felt a sharp pain in her heart and a burning sensation in her heart. Her eyes were immediately covered by a layer of mist. "What do you mean by you? I'm telling you, your mother is a vixen, and you're just a little vixen. Look, with you and your mother around, your family is ruined, right? You deserve it." Bah. These words were like sharp swords piercing Tina's heart. She felt as if her heart was being cut by a knife. Her lips moved, but she could not utter a word. Her chest rose and fell, and her tears condensed like crystals. As she blinked, tears flowed from her eyes, flowed down her cheeks, and dripped onto the ground. She burst into tears and stood there, feeling extremely helpless. At this moment, she once again felt the feeling of the most despair. Hiss! Johong, who could no longer bear it, looked gloomy. He stood up and pointed at the woman and shouted, "We are not talking. Do you think I dare not control you? Are you done yet? Can you please get out of here? If you don't get out of here, I will not be polite to you." Johong picked up the soda bottle on the table and held it in his hand. Veins popped out of his sturdy arms and his eyes flashed with ferocity, as if he was going to smash the bottle on the woman's head in the next second. Bella also stood up, pulled Tina behind her, stared at the woman in front of her, and whispered, "Old woman, dare you bully her again?" The woman snorted coldly, not taking Zhou Hong and Bella's threats seriously at all. She crossed her arms and said, "Is there anything wrong with what I said? I have some relationship with her after all. What's wrong with me educating her on behalf of her mother? What does it have to do with you? You are a bunch of little brats. Are you trying to scare me? Come on. I am standing right here. What can you do to me?" Zhou Heng's eyebrows were furious, and he almost bit his teeth with anger. The rage in his heart rose a lot, and his eyelids twitched violently. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore and stepped forward, ready to teach the woman a lesson. Snapped. At this moment, a hand suddenly patted the woman's shoulder. Zhou Hong couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He saw the person behind the woman, who had just been so angry that he wanted to explode, immediately calmed down. Then, Zhou Hong took a step back and sat down slowly. Bella also hugged Tina's shoulders and slowly sat her down. The woman frowned and turned her head to look at the person behind her. Zhou Heng's mother, Lu Wei, was standing behind him, still holding the phone in her hand. She had a smile on her face and was talking to the person on the other end of the phone. "Yeah, okay, I got it. Don't worry, you." The woman was about to speak and question Lu Wei, but just as she said a word, the hand on the woman's shoulder suddenly began to exert force. The flesh on the woman's shoulder was pinched so hard that it sank in. She grimaced in pain and one side of her body sagged. Then he quickly reached out and grabbed Lu Wei's hand on his shoulder. Let go. It hurts so much." Lu Wei was still talking on the phone with a smile, as if it wasn't her who had just exerted force, and it had nothing to do with her. He also completely ignored what the woman said. Yes, I'm having dinner outside with my 3 children. Okay, let's talk another day."
Bye.
Lu Wei finished her closing remarks, hung up the phone, and put the phone back in her pocket. After doing all this, when she raised her head again, the smile on her face disappeared instantly. His face darkened and he narrowed his eyes, with only bottomless darkness in them. She let go of her hand, took a step forward, looked down at the woman, and said coldly, "Who are you? How dare you bully my child? You are so brave." Chapter 67, "But I will definitely treat you as my own daughter." "Your child?" The woman rubbed her shoulders and looked at Zhou Hong and the other 2 with her eyebrows raised. "Which one is your child? How did you educate them? How rude. I am their elder after all." The woman glared at Zhou Hong and Bella, her nose raised, her mouth pouted, and she looked speechless. Tina leaned in Bella's arms, lowered her head, and didn't dare to look ahead. She knew that this was all her fault, and even involved Zhou Hong and Bella. It had nothing to do with them, but she got them into trouble. Which parent would allow their child to stay with someone like me? There might be trouble like this someday, and I myself am a big burden. So when Lu Wei arrived, Tina only felt guilty. It was because of her presence that she attracted such people. Lu Wei frowned, looking extremely dissatisfied. She pointed at Zhou Hong and the others and said, "All 3 of them are my children. Who do you think is rude? Say it again and let me tell you." Exclamation point. Tina heard Lu Wei's words. She suddenly raised her head, tears still hanging on her face, and looked at her in disbelief. Am I also included in this? Like Zhou Hong and Bella? If she is excluded at this time, she will feel very sad and have a feeling of being redundant. But now, Tina felt a special sense of security in her heart, which made her feel like she was being protected by her mother again. All 3. Haha. Tina, do you still treat this as your own child? Tina, is this the stepmother you found? Really? I was right about you, you ungrateful bastard. It's only been a few days since your mother passed away? You accepted it so quickly. Snapped. As soon as the woman finished her words, a cup of water was suddenly poured on her face. Her hair and collar were instantly soaked. The woman's eyes widened, and she was stunned for a few seconds before she reacted. She raised her head and looked at Lu Wei, who had a calm expression on her face. Her nonchalant look made her anger instantly reach its peak. What are you doing? The woman screamed loudly. Her voice was sharp and piercing, and the fat on her whole body trembled. Lu Wei raised her head, looking very innocent, spread her hands, and said lightly, "What did I do? I just wanted to pour the water. Who told you to stand here?" The woman gritted her teeth, pointed at Lu Wei, and shouted, "You! You!" Lu Wei's eyes sharpened. She stared at her and said sternly, "What do you mean by you? You look like a QR code. If you don't scan it, you won't know what you are. You look very creative and live very courageously. Are you so arrogant because the Animal Association protects you? No matter how much cheap perfume you spray on your body, it can't cover up your animal smell. Me. What do you mean by I? Don't do whatever you want just because you have a problem with your brain. Doesn't that donkey do nothing but kick you in the head all day? You only have one face. Don't you know how to save it? An adult is bullying a child, and you are the elder? You will just die faster than those children in my family." The woman breathed heavily, as if she couldn't catch her breath. She took 2 steps back and almost lost her balance. Her legs were weak, and she would have been unable to stand without holding on to the wall. This was the first time she had been humiliated like this. Her face was red and almost bleeding, like an angry lion, with a twisted expression as if she was desperate. Zhou and Bella even covered their faces with their hands because they were afraid that they would not be able to hold back their laughter. Tina was also surprised. She didn't expect Zhou mother to have such strong attack power. He was always very gentle when talking to them. I didn't expect that he could have this side. If he had scolded me, I would have burst into tears. Lu Wei stared at the front and said in a cold voice, "I'm telling you, Xiaoran is different now. She's my child. If you dare to bully her again, I will definitely not forgive you. Come on, openly or secretly, black or white, do whatever you want. Do you really think our family is easy to mess with?" Well, the woman pointed at Lu Wei, then at Tina, and was so angry that her face looked like a popcorn pot. Then, she wiped the water off her face, turned around and left here angrily. As soon as she left, the whole hotel returned to silence and harmony. Lu Wei exhaled, as if letting out all the anger she had just felt. Then she sat down next to Tina. Tina had stopped crying at this time. Lu Wei stood up for her. She felt relieved now, but there were still some tears in the corners of her eyes. She lowered her head and whispered, "Thank you, Auntie." She didn't know how to express her gratitude, nor did she know how to face Lu Wei now. Because of what Lu Wei had just said, "She is my child," she felt a little dazed. Her eyes tightened, and she had the urge to cry. Maybe I just said it to that woman at that time. Now that the matter has been resolved, should I take it seriously? At this time, Lu Wei took a few tissues, stretched out her hand, and gently wiped away the tears from the corners of Tina's eyes. "Don't be afraid, baby. You don't have to worry about her bullying you anymore. You have someone to protect you now. I will protect you in the future." Lu Wei held Tina's hand. A gentle smile bloomed on her lips, and the tenderness in her eyes became more intense. Tina was stunned. Then her eyes began to shine and her eyelashes moved several times. Well, the next second, she burst into tears like a child, tears streaming down her cheeks. He couldn't suppress the most fragile emotions in his heart and threw himself into Lu Wei's arms, crying loudly. Lu Wei hugged Tina, patted her back gently, and whispered in her ear, Okay, don't be afraid anymore. Although I'm definitely not as good as your mother, I promise that I will treat you like I treat Zhou. You don't have to treat me as your mother, but I will definitely treat you as my own daughter." Me. Tina sobbed and couldn't even utter a complete sentence. She couldn't believe this was real. It was like a dream. Ever since her family encountered misfortune, she no longer had that feeling of home. But at Zhou house, she felt it again. How she wished she could fit in. How she wished she could be one of them. Therefore, the current situation made her feel a little flattered. If it was a dream, she didn't want to wake up. Bella was watching from the side and suddenly said, "Aunt, can you adopt Tina as your goddaughter? Didn't you always say you wanted a daughter?" Lu Wei smiled, as if she had been waiting for this opportunity. Tina in her arms and asked softly, Would you like to? Chapter 68. By then, I don't know which kid will take the basin away with him. Tina sat up from Lu Wei's arms, wiped her tears with her hands, and said hesitantly,
ZG.
That's great. My big baby. I love you so much. Come on, don't cry. Lu Wei was overjoyed and hugged Tina, comforting her softly. Tina was in Lu Wei's arms, and the feeling was just like the feeling of being in her own mother's arms. She felt relieved all of a sudden and closed her eyes, as if she was enjoying this moment. After her parents left, she was left with a sequelae. Whenever she was slightly stimulated or frightened, her heart would always tremble as if it was about to jump out of her throat, and she felt very choked up. But now, her symptoms seemed to have disappeared unconsciously. Staying in Lu Wei's arms, her heart beat at a steady pace, very stable and comfortable. Tina wanted to continue like this. It was impossible after all. She sat up and sobbed softly. Auntie, Still calling me Auntie? Lu Wei smiled slightly, stretched out her hand, and lifted Tina's hair. Tina's cheeks flushed slightly. She was silent for a few seconds and spoke in a very low voice. Godmother? Oh, godmother doesn't sound nice. Don't use that word. We are all family. Don't call her that in such a strange and unkind way. Tina's face turned even redder, and she lowered her head a little. Finally, her voice was so low that only Lu Wei could hear it. Mom. Lu Wei responded and gently stroked Tina's face with her hand. The more she looked at her, the more she liked her. Bella pulled Tina's arm and whispered, Come on, I'll take you to the bathroom to wash your face. Tina and Bella walked out together and went to the bathroom. Lu Wei's eyes were still following Tina's back, staring intently, with a smile on her face. Zhou glanced at his mother and asked, Is this really okay? I feel like you're too eager. Will it scare her? TSK, you don't know how much I envy Zhou Yalin. Zhou asked in surprise, My aunt? What do you envy her for? Lu Wei rolled her eyes at Zhou and said unhappily, What do you think? I envy her for having such an outstanding daughter. Bella has never worried her parents about her studies since she was a child. Look at you. I've been mad at you all day. You've worried me to death? Zhou lowered his head, regretting that he had asked such a question, which now made him feel very embarrassed. Lu Wei sighed and continued, I have always liked daughters, and now I have such an excellent girl in front of me. I love her so much. She is so good at studying, polite, and so cute and pretty. She is no worse than Bella at all. It's so rare. Zhou said while eating. Raising a daughter is like nurturing a flower. You might get taken away by some guy, and you will be upset. Zhou words made Lu Wei silent. She took a breath and frowned slightly, as if she was really thinking about Zhou words seriously. After a while, she suddenly leaned over and asked in a low voice, Tell me, do you have a chance to be with Xiaoran? It's better to keep the wealth within the family. By then, she won't have to change her mind, and I won't have to face the difficult in-laws. Even your father and I won't have to help you prepare the betrothal gifts. Oh no, Before Zhou could say anything, Lu Wei interrupted him and said, Oh, that's unlikely. I don't think Xiaoran would agree. My son is handsome, but his grades are so poor. If he can keep up with his studies, my son would be perfect. Zhou was speechless after hearing this. He held his forehead with his hand and said, I give up. I really don't understand why you take grades so seriously. I'm not going to be shot just because of my poor grades. Poor grades don't mean I'll have no future. If I can't get into college, can't I do something else? Because of his grades, he has been criticized since he was a child. He must have calluses on his ears from hearing so much about other people's children. If it were any other child, they would have probably become depressed and died. But because of his personality, Zhou had a better psychological endurance, and he no longer cared about the words he had heard since he was a child. Even so, he still couldn't understand why his parents always cared so much about his grades. This world doesn't necessarily need people who are good at studying. Should people who are poor at studying die? Lu Wei saw that Zhou was faintly angry and she was silent for a long time. After a while, when Zhou Heng calmed down, she reached out her hand and gently placed it on the back of Zhou Heng's hand, saying, "Son, as your mother, I can't just look at your grades. Studying is not the only way out, and it may not be the most suitable for you. It may not be the best for you, but I think this is a relatively simple path. There are many people who have a bright future without going to school, but do we want to take a gamble? There is an easy path in front of you. Why don't you take it?" Zhou Heng remained silent and did not reply, but that did not mean he did not listen carefully. "Your father and I have the same idea. We don't care how much money you make. You don't have to give us a penny of the money you make. We just hope that you don't have to work so hard, don't have to do jobs that offer opportunities to get rich overnight, and don't have to rack your brains to think about how to make a lot of money. As long as you are down to earth and can support yourself, your wife and children, and a family, then in your mother's heart, you will be the most amazing person." Lu Wei held Zhou Heng's hand and said softly. Zhou Heng could feel that his mother's palms seemed to become rougher. More than a decade ago, when he was still a child, he held his mother's hand. At that time, he felt that his mother's hand was white and tender, and it felt good to hold it. But now, it is no longer the same as before. It is much rougher and thicker. He went from being ignorant to gradually realizing that his family's conditions were pretty good. "All of this was earned by my parents who worked hard and never complained. I have never spent less than others since I was a child. Although he is not good at studying and likes to play, he is definitely not the kind of child who cannot listen to reason. On the contrary, it is precisely because he understands his parents' good intentions that he has come to his senses and is studying hard. It doesn't matter how well you do in the exam, as long as you don't disappoint your parents' expectations." Zhou Heng exhaled and said softly, "Yes, I understand." Chapter 69. Don't think too much. Let's just stay the same as before. After dinner, they prepared to leave. Lu Wei first drove Bella to the downstairs of her home. "Bye, Aunt. You promised to come to my house someday." Lu Wei waved at her and said, Okay. Zhou Heng and Xiao Ran will come to your house to play this weekend, right? Keep an eye on Zhou Heng, and don't let him cause trouble for your mother." Bella chuckled and prepared to turn around and leave. "It's okay. No, I'll go first, Aunt. Please drive slowly." "Okay, go back now." Bella left. Lu Wei rolled up the car window and drove away, taking Zhou Heng and Tina home. Tina sat in the back, looking at the night view outside the car window, the houses with lights still on, and pursed her lips slightly. A few days ago, she thought that she would be alone looking at the lights of thousands of houses, but would have no place to stay. But now, she is sitting in the comfort of her car, ready to return to her safe new home. The two people sitting in front of me became my family, making me feel at home again. At this moment, Tina suddenly thought, since she was the goddaughter of Zhou Heng's mother, did that mean she and Zhou Heng were brother and sister? Isn't that right? They are not a reconstituted family, and they are not adopted, so they have little to do with Zhou Heng. Generally speaking, they just talk about their own things. I call Zhou Heng's mother Mom, but I have no relationship with Zhou Heng. They can be family members, friends, or classmates, but they can never be siblings. Thinking of this, Tina suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Lu Wei drove Zhou Heng and Tina to the downstairs of their home. Before they got out of the car, she said, "Didn't I answer a phone call before dinner? I have to go back tomorrow. Zhou Heng, remember to tell me when your grades come out?" Okay, I get it, but don't expect too much." Zhou Heng nodded, then got out of the car and walked towards home. Tina got out of the car. She didn't leave in a hurry. Instead, she stood aside and looked at Lu Wei in the car, as if she wanted to say something but hesitated. Tina liked this, her eyes slightly raised, and she smiled. "Go back, honey. I'll come visit you guys some other day. We've exchanged phone numbers and added each other as friends. If you have anything to say, just tell me. Don't be shy." Tina raised her head, the corners of her mouth raised with a happy smile. She nodded heavily and said, "Well, Mom, take care of yourself then, and be safe on your way back." Tina's soft voice reached Lu Wei's ears. She was slightly startled, raised her eyebrows slightly, and then smiled charmingly. She opened the car door and stepped out from the driver's seat. Tina was stunned for a moment, not knowing what was going on. The next second, Lu Wei approached Tina, gently held her face with both hands, and kissed her on the forehead. Tina widened her eyes. A hint of surprise flashed across her eyes, and then Lu Wei whispered in her ear, "Don't get sick." Even after the car drove away, Tina still stood there, unable to recover from the shock. She stretched out her hand and placed it on her forehead, her mouth slightly open, and only her eyes blinked from time to time to prove that she was not petrified. The cool breeze of the summer night blew across her face, lifting her hair and making her body feel slightly cold, but her heart was so hot that it was hard to cool down. Seeing that Tina hadn't come upstairs for a long time, Zhou Heng came down directly, walked out the door, saw Tina standing there, and called out, "What's wrong? Are you going home? Isn't it cold outside?" Oh. Tina recovered and quickly walked forward, entering the building with Zhou Heng. While sitting in the elevator, Zhou Heng said, "The weather is getting colder. My mom bought me some autumn clothes. Take them and wear them first. When you have a break, you can buy more. I'll give you the money. Don't refuse. This is what my mom meant." Tina nodded and answered honestly, "New." After returning home, Tina looked at Zhou Heng's back. There was one thing in her mind that she hadn't said out loud. She felt that she should ask Zhou Heng clearly, as it would be bad if she offended him unknowingly. Zhou Heng. Zhou Heng heard Tina's voice and turned to look at her. Tina turned her head to one side, holding her elbow with one hand, and whispered, "That is, if I become your mother's goddaughter, would you be unhappy? Would you mind?" She asked quietly. After all, Zhou Heng was her biological son, and she always had to ask for his opinion. If the other person minds, then of course she can't push it any further, even if she is really afraid of changing the result now. Zhou Heng raised his eyebrows, was stunned for a few seconds, then shook his head and said, "You're happy about this. My mom is happy, and I'm happy too because I got all the living expenses. How could I mind? It's just that your relationship with my mom has changed, but you and I haven't changed. Don't think too much. We should just be the same as before." After hearing Zhou Heng's words, Tina felt relieved. What she was most worried about was that her relationship with Zhou Heng would deteriorate and become worse than before. Since Zhou Heng said so, she can rest assured. At night, they took turns to take a bath, put on pajamas, and prepare to go back to the bedroom to sleep. Tina looked at the bed in front of her where the two of them slept together and thought that her godmother might have known that she and Zhou Heng slept in the same bed. So she didn't say anything? Did she mean she agreed? Zhou Heng also walked in. Looking at the bed in front of him, he suddenly remembered what his mother said yesterday. "Oh, my mom said that this house is a little small for the two of us. After all, there is only one bedroom. So when the lease of this house is up in a while, we have to move to another place." This is it so? Tina's eyes flickered and she answered reluctantly, "When I think about the change of house, it should not be a bedroom, which means Zhou Heng and I no longer sleep together at night." Tina's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly denied the idea in her mind. What am I thinking about? This situation must be hard for Zhou Heng. After all, he was big and strong, and it must have been very uncomfortable for him to share a bed with me. He wanted to sleep on the sofa, but Zhou Heng disagreed. If there were two bedrooms, Zhou Heng would have much more space to sleep, which was a good thing. Why do I feel a little lost? Chapter 70. If I confess my feelings to you, will Zhou Heng agree? Turn off the lights. The two of them lay on the bed. Zhou Heng closed his eyes and was already beginning to feel sleepy. Tina couldn't sleep and could hardly close her eyes because she couldn't digest all the things that happened today. She recalled the whole thing in her mind and finally stopped at the part where Zhou Heng said that they were going to move to a new place. Times like this are becoming less and less every day. Tina looked at the ceiling and thought to herself, although they slept in the same bed every night, they used different quilts and pillows, and there was a partition between them. Except for occasionally chatting after turning off the lights, they had no contact in bed. At this time, Tina suddenly thought that the only day that was different seemed to be the day when Zhou Heng was particularly tired and sleepy. He turned over in his sleep and accidentally put his arm on himself. If he was closer, he would really be hugging himself while sleeping. The next day, Jo-hung apologized to himself and explained the matter. Anyway, they will sleep separately by then. So, a very dangerous idea came to Tina's mind, since Jo-hung could accidentally roll over next to her in his sleep. Then, isn't it possible for me? It's just that Jo-hung was careless, so he could pretend to be careless. That is, pretend to be asleep. Anyway, just pretend you knew nothing the next day. It was completely unconscious, so there is no need to feel embarrassed. Tina pursed her lips, her heart pounding, feeling particularly excited. What she was about to do was something she had never thought of before. She was not in a hurry to move, because if she wanted to pretend to be asleep, she would have to pretend for more than half an hour before moving. Otherwise, I would definitely be suspected. How can I turn over so soon after falling asleep? So she held on for more than half an hour with this thought in mind. It was already late at night, and it was pitch black outside, with no light at all. Tina felt that she could start to act, so she moved her body slightly, as if to test it. The partition in the middle can be easily crossed by just turning over. But if I cross over, I will really be in Jo-heng's territory. I am so close to him that I can stick to him. Therefore, you must know how to act properly and make it appear as if your behavior was completely unconscious so that no clues can be detected. First, Tina moved her quilt aside. Otherwise, she would be rolled into the quilt when she turned over. Then, she turned sideways and faced Jo-hung. But the bedroom was so dark that she had no idea whether Jo-hung was asleep or not. It would be best if he had just fallen asleep. Even if I woke him up accidentally, he wouldn't realize that I did it on purpose. If he is not asleep, then his behavior must be more natural, otherwise it will be easy to be seen as pretending to sleep. After a while, Tina felt that it was time to move on to the next step. She turned over, trying to land on the middle of the quilt so that she could put her arms on Jo-hung. However, she underestimated inertia, and when she turned over, she realized that she seemed unable to stop. So the next second, she flipped over to the other side, which was where Jo-hung was sleeping. Tina was shocked and broke out in a cold sweat. Her heart beat faster, fearing that her big move would arouse Jo-heng's suspicion. But she stopped moving for more than 10 seconds, and Jo-hung didn't move at all. Tina could feel that her legs were touching Jo-heng's body, and the distance between them was now so wide that not even a fist could fit. Tina opened her eyes a little, took a peek, and found that Jo-hung seemed to have his back to her, and he was sleeping facing that way. When I turned over, Jo-hung didn't move, which meant he must have fallen asleep. Tina breathed a sigh of relief, and her heartbeat slowly returned to normal. At this moment, Tina suddenly remembered that she also thought Jo-hung was asleep the last time, but he seemed to wake up in the end. If he didn't tell her, she really wouldn't know. So this time, Tina was a little worried. Could it be that Jo-hung was not asleep and was just pretending to be asleep? She used her hands to move the quilt behind her a lot, so that she could move back a little and not stick to Jo-hung. The distance between the two of them was controlled by her, with her body leaning sideways. Not very close, but within reach. Then, Tina began to think about the next step. Now she was facing Jo-hung, while Jo-hung had his back to her. So what should I do next? Should I reach out and put my hand on Jo-hung? Or should I be more conservative and just put my hand over? Just as Tina was thinking, Jo-hung in front of her suddenly made a move. Tina quickly closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep, pretending that she knew nothing. The next second, Jo-hung's body turned over, and the space she vacated just gave Jo-hung room to turn over. Tina shuddered all over. She closed her eyes and couldn't see what was happening, but her body could feel it. My head is now pressed against Jo-hung's chest. The arm that was resting on his body was Jo-hung's arm. Now I am truly in Jo-hung's arms. What's the situation? Tina didn't dare to open her eyes or move. She hadn't made any moves yet, and hadn't figured out how to put her hands on Jo-hung. Now Jo-hung is holding her in his arms? So is Jo-hung asleep or awake now? Tina could feel Jo-hung's even breathing and heartbeat. She listened for a while and found that Jo-hung's heartbeat rate did not change. Logically, if Jo-hung was awake, His heartbeat should have changed at this time, right? In other words, Zhou Hong is still sleeping and hasn't woken up yet? Does that mean? After a moment, Tina slowly raised her hand and paused in the air for a few seconds. Finally, it slowly fell on Zhou Heng's waist. The two seemed to be hugging each other at this moment, and Tina also felt an incomparable peace. At this time, an idea came to her mind. She thought that only after Zhou Hong fell asleep could she experience such a feeling. It was really a bit sad. When Zhou Hong is awake, they can hug each other like this? That must be after they are together. I definitely like Zhou Hong, and now I don't have to think about it anymore. But I just don't know if Zhou Hong will like me. If I take the initiative to confess my feelings, will Zhou Hong agree? But no matter what, we can't delay Zhou Heng's studies now. Tina closed her eyes and quickly fell asleep in Zhou Heng's arms. However, after Tina fell asleep, in the darkness, Zhou Hong slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 71. Bella, have you been studying secretly? Tina opened her sleepy eyes and saw the sunlight creeping in through the gaps in the curtains in their room. She hummed a nasal sound and saw that Zhou Hong was no longer beside her. When Tina thought about how she fell asleep in his arms last night, she felt so dreamy, as if she was dreaming. She fell asleep quickly, and she didn't know what happened afterwards. They probably turned over again and then separated. I don't know if Zhou Hong found out what happened last night. Well, Tina sat up from the bed. Her pajamas slipped off her shoulders, revealing her milky white shoulders like ivory sculptures. She changed her clothes, opened the curtains to let the sunlight in, and folded the quilt. After walking out of the bedroom, I saw that Zhou Hong had already prepared breakfast. Zhou Hong saw Tina. He greeted her softly, "Good morning." "Morning." Tina smiled, revealing her white and neat teeth. Her overall spirit and energy were completely different from the previous few days. It can be said that from today on, Tina is like a brand new person. Tina went to wash up, then sat at the dining table and had breakfast with Zhou Hong. Zhou Hong took a sip of porridge and asked, "The results should be out today, right? I remember it will take about 2 days." "Well, the results of almost all subjects will be out this morning. If everything goes well, the rankings should be out this afternoon." "Well," Zhou Hong sighed. Tina looked at him in surprise and asked, "Are you still worried about your grades?" "It's okay. It's okay even if you didn't reach your goal. It's just a monthly exam. You didn't have a few days to review. Just do well next time." "Okay, I know." After they had breakfast, they packed up their things and went to school together. Perhaps because the results were due today, the atmosphere in school was rather depressing. Most of the students had stopped laughing at this point. They were always worried and frightened. Whenever the results of a subject were to be announced, they would be in an uproar. Zhou Hong hoped to know the results sooner so that he could compare himself with others and see how far he was behind. Originally, he was ranked in the top 200 in his grade. In the class, Kongyu was almost at the same level as him. Their grades were similar before. But this time, the gap started to widen. When the results of each subject were announced, Zhou Hong would not only listen to his own results, but would also specifically investigate Kongyu's results. He found that his scores in every subject were much higher than Kongyu's. Tina was also worried about Zhou Hong. She even ignored her own grades and kept looking at Zhou Heng's. Every time a subject was announced, she would record the results in her notebook and even find out Zhou Heng's previous results for comparison. Seeing Zhou Heng's great progress, Tina finally smiled. "You did really well in the exam this time. Moving up 50 places shouldn't be a problem. You're ranked over 200, so there's a lot of room for improvement. It's very simple." Bella also praised him. She didn't expect Zhou Hong to improve so quickly. "It's really worth it after not logging into the game for many days." "I hope so." Zhou Hong also felt that he should be stable, but he was not 100% sure. After all, he was not the only one making progress. What if other people's results are pretty good this time? Wouldn't it be difficult for me to move up that much in the rankings? After the results were announced, some were happy while others were sad. At this time, Kongyu was about to break down. He lay on the table, holding his head, with a look of despair on his face. He didn't expect that he would do so badly in the exam this time, Not as good as he did last time. He thought that he really hadn't studied at all. After school started, he first pursued Bella, and after failing, he turned to Kelly. Now Kelly finally has some hope and has agreed to go out with me on the weekend. And now this huge bad news has come. I will be beaten to death when I go back home tonight. After lunch, they entered the afternoon class. Just when everyone was trembling with fear, the sudden bad news finally made them completely dead in the air. The rankings are out. Ranking lists were handed to them, showing their scores and ranking changes. Jo-hung felt a chill running down his spine. He took the list and searched for his name on it. In the past, he could just start from the back. After all, he would definitely be at the bottom, and he would be able to see his name among the last few. But this time, he looked back and found that his name was not among the top 10. Exclamation point. At this time, he finally found his name, ranking in the middle of the class. In the class, my ranking rose by more than 10 places. Grade ranking rose from 233 to 168. Boom! Jo-hung excitedly slapped the table. The sound was so loud that it immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the class. Ahem. He coughed awkwardly twice, lowered his head, and covered his forehead with his hands. It can be said that this is the most exciting moment for him in a year. When he received the task of rising 50 ranks, he thought it would be impossible to complete. Unexpectedly, he actually did it and rose 65 places. He looked around and found that he was the one who made the most progress and rose the most in the entire class. Jo-hung knew that Tina had made an indelible contribution to his progress, and that it was all thanks to Tina's help. When Jo-hung looked at Tina, he found that she was also looking at him. The two looked at each other. Tina's slightly pursed lips drew a graceful arc, stretched out her hand, and gestured to him, yeah, as if she was happy for him and celebrating for him. Jo-hung looked at her steadily, and a faint smile appeared on his usually stern face. Tina was startled when she saw this scene, and then quickly turned her head away. Her face flushed like a cherry, and when she saw Jo-hung smile, for some reason, her heart beat faster. The last time I saw it was when Jo-hung and Bella were playing games. I secretly saw it. But that time it was just a little smile, not very obvious. But this time, she saw it very clearly, and that feeling really made her heart beat fast. She thought Jo-hung's smile was really nice. She had just seen it once, and it was already lingering in her mind. Jo-hung lowered his head and continued to look at the rankings of others. He didn't even have to think about it. The first place must be Tina. Even though she hadn't been to school for more than 10 days, her ability was there, and she could still hold the first place when she came back. Tina ranked first. He looked down and found that the second place was not what he expected. Jo-hung looked at his deskmate in surprise and asked, Bella, have you been studying secretly? Chapter 72. There are too many. I dare not collect. It's not bad. I just studied for a while a few days before the exam. Bella took a look at the list and found that she was ranked second in the class, having been promoted from 5th. And the grade ranking also rose from 17th to 6th. She didn't seem to react much to this, as if this was a normal result. You want to climb the rankings, and you want to play games. You're so greedy. We have to achieve some results so that we can play games better. There is no conflict. Bella shrugged her shoulders and smiled, which made Jo-hung very angry, but there was nothing he could do because she had such a brain. Will you be online tonight? Nonsense, I took care of it. Jo-hung nodded. He had already achieved such a good result. Why didn't he reward himself tonight? Wouldn't this exam be in vain? One person's results are quite interesting. Jo-hung asked doubtfully, who is it? Then, Bella reached out and pointed to a person on the list. Jo-hung took a look and found that Bella was referring to Kelly. Kelly's ranking dropped from 34th in the grade to 77th, and her grades plummeted. Jo-hung looked up at Bella and asked, you mean, her regression has something to do with me? Can you deny it? No, but I don't care. If she is affected, that's her business. Jo-hung threw the list aside and said calmly. Kelly, holding the report card in her hand, looked back and forth between her own and Jo-hung's scores. Her eyes were deep and her face was solemn, but her emotions at the moment could not be seen. After a while, She put the report card down and looked in Tina's direction. Hey, what am I doing? After school in the evening, Jo-hong couldn't wait to rush home. If Tina hadn't caught up in time, she would have almost failed to keep up with Jo-hong. After returning home, Jo-hong immediately told his mother, Lu Wei, about his results. Tina sat there, smiling as she watched Jo-hong call Lu Wei to explain the situation. Although she couldn't hear what was said on the other end of the phone, she could sense from Jo-hong's words that the other end was very happy. After Jo-hong hung up the phone, he went to the room to play games. Tina looked at the report card in her hand and thought about herself in the past. She was the same. When she found out her results, she immediately went home to tell her parents. Seeing their happy expressions and hearing them praising themselves was like her spiritual sustenance. She looked forward to that moment every time. Tina looked at the chat interface on her phone, then glanced at her transcript. I don't know what she is thinking. Her expression looks very tangled. She hesitated for a long time, and finally, she took a photo of the transcript and sent it to a friend on her phone. And this good friend is Lu Wei. She didn't know why she did this, but she did it anyway, and her inner expectation quietly rose, hoping for a response. Ding! After a while, her cell phone rang. She quickly picked it up and looked at it eagerly. Baby, you're awesome. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Afterwards, a transfer was sent directly over. This is a reward for my dear. Take it quickly. Tina's eyes widened, her face filled with horror, as if she was overly frightened. Tina looked at the transfer from Lu Wei on her phone, which was 666 yuan. This reward is too much, isn't it? I used to always rank first in the exams, but I never got such a big reward. She typed and replied, Mom, thank you, but I can't accept the money. Joe, okay, take it quickly, or I'll be angry. Covering mouth and laughing. There was no sign of anger between the lines. Even Tina chuckled, feeling as sweet as if she had eaten honey. The two chatted for a few more sentences, and Tina's smile grew wider, and even her eyes and eyebrows could not help but reveal a smile. His head also swayed slightly from side to side, his happiness almost visible to the naked eye. After several refusals, Tina knew she really had to accept it. Lu Wei was indeed Zhou Heng's biological mother. When she became persistent, no one could stop her. After receiving the transfer, Tina did not plan to keep it for herself, but directly transferred it to Jo-hong. She felt that the results did not belong to her, and she told the other party her results not for the money. This is given to me by my mother, please accept it. After a while, Tina heard her phone ring. She opened it and found that the money she had transferred to Jo-hong had been returned by him. This is for you. What are you giving it to me for? Keep it. Don't be embarrassed. But there are too many. I dare not accept them. She is afraid that you won't accept it, so she gave you less on purpose. Otherwise, you are worth more than this in her heart for getting first place. She should give you at least another 6. Well, Tina looked at the message on her phone and was so surprised that her mouth couldn't close. This is still a 1-digit less reward? This is too much. She is just a goddaughter, and you treat her like this. She couldn't imagine that if Jo-hong got first place, he would probably get an even more exaggerated reward, right? Tina went to make dinner so that Jo-hong could play peacefully. After Jo-hong finished his exams and got his results, he was obviously much more relaxed and didn't play games all the time. After dinner, I took a short rest and then went to exercise. After Tina's last workout, she no longer felt any pain in her body, so she also planned to join Jo-hong. Exercise with Jo-hong and let your body slowly adapt to the feeling of exercise so that you will not strain your muscles again. After the exercise, both of them were sweating profusely, so they took turns to take a shower. When they lie down in bed at night, ready to go to sleep, they are already very tired. Tina thought about what happened last night and started to think. Of course, she still wanted to fall asleep in Zhou Heng's arms like she did last night, which would make her feel very comfortable and at ease. But there don't seem to be many opportunities like the one last night. What should I do to make it happen again? In addition to pretending to be asleep and being extra careful not to wake Jo-hong up, and make sure Jo-hong can turn over and hold himself, this can be said to be very difficult, So this kind of opportunity can only be encountered by chance. Turn off the lights. Zhou lay on the bed and asked, "It's almost the weekend, and we're going to Bella's house. You shouldn't be nervous anymore, right?" She felt that Tina's identity was different now, and now she, herself, and Bella were all a family, so she shouldn't be so nervous when she went to Bella's house again. "Well, it's okay. It's just that I don't know what kind of people Bella's family is." Tina answered quietly. She thought it would be nice if everyone was like Lu Wei, but if not, as a person from another family, she would still be very worried. Chapter 73. What a coincidence. You two, do you want to go on a date? During the weekend, students are resting. On this day, most people have arranged their schedules in advance. Kelly opened her eyes and woke up from her sleep. In fact, she didn't sleep much at all. She had been waiting for today since last night. She made an appointment with Kongyu today to go out together. Her purpose was simple, and there was only one, which was to learn about Zhou and Tina from Kongyu. What did he mean when he said that the two people were living together? What did he know? Kelly washed her face, went to the dressing table, and looked at herself in the mirror. After staring for a few seconds, Kelly suddenly stood up and muttered, "Why put on makeup? I won't put it on anymore. It's not necessary." She was forced to go out with Kongyu just to get some information. Otherwise, she would never go out with Kongyu in her life. In this situation, she didn't want to put on makeup at all, as she felt it would be a waste of makeup. So she tied her hair up casually, picked up a random piece of clothing, and her whole demeanor didn't look like she was going out to meet people, but rather like she was going out to pick up a package. Kelly looked at her phone and found that Kongyu had sent her many messages, most of which were asking her if she was awake and when she would come out. She was a little speechless. She had no choice but to add him as her friend, but now he kept sending her messages, just like Zhou back then. But this person is far worse than Zhou. If she woke up now and saw Zhou sending her so many messages, she couldn't believe how happy she would be. After briefly replying to Kongyu, Kelly went out to meet him, and he secretly decided in his heart that as soon as he heard the news, he would leave immediately and never stay. They agreed to meet at the entrance of a park. When Kelly arrived, she saw someone already standing there. This person is Kongyu. He is standing under a tree, holding a mobile phone in his hand, looking at himself on the phone, and constantly fiddling with his hair, which seems to be sprayed with hairspray. Kelly couldn't help but feel disgusted, and even wanted to escape at this moment. In my heart, I kept weighing whether it was worth it. This was selling my soul. If someone I knew saw it, I would want to die. Maybe I would transfer to another school like Lu Yunxua. Kongyu saw Kelly approaching slowly, and immediately smiled and walked towards her. "Hi, you're here. Hurry up and tell me, and leave as soon as you're done." Kelly kept a certain distance from him, within earshot of him. Whenever Kongyu took a step forward, she would take a step back. Kongyu saw Kelly's thoughts, spread his hands, and said helplessly, "Then we have to talk while we walk, right?" TSK. Kelly had no choice but to leave here with Kongyu and start walking. But she deliberately staggered the distance between herself and Kongyu, making it seem as if they were unfamiliar with each other. Kelly walked behind Kongyu, crossed her arms, stared at him, and said, "Okay, tell me, do you know?" "Of course I know. How could I lie to you?" Kongyu deliberately slowed down his pace and got closer to Kelly before he slowly spoke. "This is what happened. Lu Yunxua didn't come to the exam that day. Liang Jiaxiang said he might not come again. After I went back, I contacted him and asked. He said he was going to deliver breakfast to the monitor in the morning. But when he was downstairs at her house, he suddenly saw her and Zhou walking out together. He went up to question him and found out that it was Zhou home and the monitor was living there." Kelly frowned when he heard this, and even ignored the distance between himself and Kongyu. He walked up to Kongyu and asked, "Why? Why is she living in Zhou house?" I don't know. Lu Yunxua just told me that. He doesn't know the reason either, but it seems that the monitor had a conflict with him." "You don't know? That's all you know, and you tricked me out." Kelly frowned and stared at him with a hint of anger in her eyes. Kongyu quickly said, "No. What do you mean by tricking you out? You came out voluntarily, and I told you everything I know. So where did I trick you? You. Kelly bit her lip. She was so angry. She thought she could hear some useful information. Now she knows that she was wrong and should not have placed any hope on Kongyu. I am leaving. Kelly turned to leave. Staying here would only show how stupid she was. When Kongyu saw that she was about to leave, he immediately stepped forward to dissuade her. After all, he had finally invited Kelly out. He is leaving after just a short while, then he is really at a loss. Hey, don't leave. You're already here. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? How about I treat you to a meal, so that you don't come out for nothing? Forget it. I'll just take it as taking out the trash. Kelly didn't stop, but walked faster and faster. Kongyu was also chasing closely behind. At this moment, two figures suddenly appeared at the corner ahead, and Kelly stopped immediately to avoid bumping into them. But when she saw who the two people in front of her were, her heart trembled uncontrollably. She staggered back, her eyes full of disbelief. Child! Tina saw Kelly in front of her and subconsciously wanted to call her, but then she immediately closed her mouth and pretended not to see it. Zhou Hong, who was standing aside, frowned slightly, but when he saw Kongyu behind Kelly, his brows relaxed again. You guys. Kelly stood there, her whole body as if petrified, her mouth slightly open, as if she wanted to say something, but she couldn't say anything. She was skeptical about what Kongyu said just now, but now, she is completely convinced that it is true. How else to explain why these two people appeared together so early in the morning on the weekend? Kongyu also stopped and saw the two people in front of him. He was slightly startled, and then he showed a meaningful smile. What a coincidence, you two. Do you want to go on a date? Zhou Hong and Tina passed by him. Zhou Hong responded coldly. What? Then he and Tina left straight away, not paying any attention to Kelly at all, as if they hadn't seen her at all. Seeing the two people walking further and further away, Kelly came to her senses. She quickly turned around, chased after them, and called out to them. Wait a moment. Chapter 74. Could it be that they haven't gotten the marriage certificate yet, but have held the wedding in advance? Zhou Hong and Tina stopped and looked back at Kelly. Kelly had when he first confessed his feelings. Tina, on the other hand, had a calm expression on her face, and her overall look gave off the feeling that she was not familiar with Kelly at all. You really live together? I heard it from others. Kelly asked in disbelief. She couldn't wait to know the truth and hear it from the man himself. Maybe after knowing the truth, she won't be able to bear it. 1. Is a boy who had pursued her for 2 years. Now he is no longer pursuing her. Instead, she has developed a good impression of him. She wants to win him back, but is powerless. The other one is her best friend who she has been friends with for 2 years. She always thinks that they will be good friends for life. These two people are almost the two people with whom I have the closest relationship in my high school life. But now, I feel like I've been abandoned. The two of them are together. I used to have a close relationship with them, but now it seems that it has suddenly been severed. She couldn't accept this reality. She wouldn't feel so bad no matter who Zhou Hong was with. She could also accept Tina being with other people. But what she couldn't accept the most was the relationship between Zhou Hong and Tina. It's like being betrayed and abandoned. Zhou Hong looked up at Kongyu behind him, and Kongyu quickly turned his head away, pretending to be unaware of the scenery, with an innocent look on his face, but his body was shaking slightly. I told Kelly about this. I think Zhou Hong won't question me then. What if Zhou Hong gets angry with him? How should he explain? Tina looked at Zhou Hong. Without Zhou Hong's consent, she didn't dare to say anything. Zhou Hong gave her a look, as if to agree that she could speak out. Tina understood and turned to look at Kelly. Even though she hadn't spoken yet, Kelly felt very heartbroken just by seeing the eye contact between the two. They seemed to have a tacit understanding and can understand each other's meaning just by looking at each other. Yes, it's true. I live in Zhou Hong's house. Tina nodded and admitted it. Kelly got a positive answer, as if a thunder exploded in her mind. Such an outrageous and ridiculous thing is actually true. How could she accept this? No wonder the two of them were drifting further and further away from me. It turns out that they were drifting closer and closer. But why? What was the opportunity that brought them together? So, what is your relationship now? Kelly opened her mouth slowly and asked weakly. She felt that asking this question now was just asking nonsense. The two of them are already living together. So isn't this a natural relationship? Zhou Heng's eyebrows slightly frowned. He wanted to answer that they were friends, classmates, or roommates, but he suddenly thought that the relationship between the two of them was a little bit delicate now. In addition to these superficial relationships, on a deeper level, the two of them are also a family. So the next second, Zhou Heng answered, "She calls my mom too. You can figure out what the relationship is. Goodbye." After saying that, he reached out, grabbed Tina's wrist, and took her away from here. Tina was stunned for a moment and let Zhou Heng pull her. She looked at Zhou Heng's profile and a gentle smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Zhou Heng thought that the two of them were going to Bella's house now and had no time to waste here. As for why he answered like that, since he didn't know how to explain his relationship with Tina, he just threw the question out and let her figure it out herself. Anyway, what I said is the truth, so you can guess whatever you want. Kelly and Kongyu were already frozen in place, shocked, their mouths slightly open. Their brains seemed to have lost the ability to think. They originally thought that these two people were just boyfriend and girlfriend at most. What else could it be? But after Zhou Heng said that, it seemed that their relationship was not just that simple. Guan Zhouheng's mother is also called mom. So what else can the relationship be? Brothers and sisters are definitely out of the question. So apart from brother and sister, the most likely person is my daughter-in-law. Kongyu pointed at the two men's backs, his mouth trembling with shock. Oh my God, are they married? That's impossible. Zhou Heng is not of legal marriage age, right? Could it be that they haven't obtained the marriage certificate yet, but held the wedding in advance? Kongyu looked at Kelly and found that her face was very pale, and her lips seemed to have lost their color in an instant. How so? She murmured softly. Her voice was very small and a little hoarse, as if something was blocking her throat. Kongyu looked at Kelly with some confusion in his eyes. He didn't understand why Kelly would react like this. As classmates, we would be shocked at most after hearing such news. But why does Kelly act like she's been cuckolded? Are you okay? Kongyu asked tentatively, but did not get a response from Kelly. She stood there, looking at the two people's backs getting farther and farther away, exhaled heavily, then took a step forward, as if she had completely ignored Kongyu. Kongyu looked bewildered. He stretched out his hand and wanted to say something, but he didn't dare to call her. He could only watch her leave. Even though he had called out Kelly with great difficulty, Kongyu really didn't dare to say anything more seeing her current state. Soon, Kongyu was the only one left standing there, looking very desolate. He began to recall what had just happened, with a thoughtful expression on his face. After a while, he said to himself in surprise, could it be that Kelly likes Zhou Heng? After Kongyu figured it out, his expression became very painful. He really didn't understand why there were only a few good-looking girls in the class, and why all of them were related to Zhou Heng. First it was Bella, then Tina, and now even Kelly, who Zhou Heng had been pursuing for 2 years without success, has started to like him. He didn't understand. What was Zhou Heng's charm? Was he worse than him? What was wrong with him? Even though he is very unconvinced now, judging from the current situation, he knows that there is no hope for him to pursue Kelly and he will probably end up in failure again. Or, I should just go after girls from other classes. Chapter 75. It's all up to you. Just arrange it for us.
Tina phone rang.
She took it out and saw that it was a message from Bella. How long will it take you to arrive? Bella asked how long it would take us to get there. Tina looked up at Zhou Heng and asked, because she didn't know where Bella's home was. Zhou Heng glanced at her and said, no need to reply to her, we are already downstairs. After saying that, he pointed to the residential building in front of him and walked in first. Tina quickly followed, but still replied to Bella, already arrived. The two took the elevator to the designated floor. As soon as they got off the elevator, Tina saw a door open and Bella was standing at the door, waiting for them. Tina saw Bella. She immediately smiled and stretched out her hand to greet her. Bella also smiled and waved her hand. The two of them seemed like good friends who had known each other for many years. Then, Bella shouted into the house, "Mom, Jo-hung and the others are here."
Iari come.
A woman's voice responded from inside, followed by the sound of someone walking hurriedly towards the door in slippers. The next second, a woman appeared behind Bella. She was a little shorter than Bella, but her overall temperament was very different from Bella. Her gentle and elegant temperament could not be hidden. Tina knew at a glance that Bella's dark and deep eyes were inherited from her mother. Their eyes are exactly the same. And she also subconsciously compared herself with Jo-heng's mother in her heart. Although it was very rude, at least in her heart, she still thought Jo-heng's mother was prettier. Jo-hung bowed slightly, greeted her, and said, "Aunt, I'm here to eat for free." Bella's mother, Jo-yalan, saw the two people at the door and immediately smiled. "Hey, okay, this is little Tina, right?" Tina bowed quickly and responded softly, "Well, hello, Auntie. My name is Tina." "Well, good boy. Come in quickly, come in quickly." Jo-yalan brought the slippers and motioned for the two to go into the house. Tina followed Jo-hung and went inside with him. "You guys go play for a while. I'll go cook, and we'll have lunch at noon." Jo-yalan put on an apron and went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. Tina took a look at the kitchen counter, which was full of ingredients, which surprised her. This happened to be during the holidays at her home, and it didn't feel like a home-cooked meal at all. So she quickly put down what she was holding, followed him into the kitchen, and said, "Auntie, let me help you. I can help out and won't cause any more trouble." As she spoke, she rolled up her sleeves and prepared to help. Jo-yalan was stunned for a moment, then the corners of her lips slightly raised in a smile. Wen Yu's smile was very warm, and her eyes were full of tenderness. "No wonder Bella said that I will definitely like you after you come. You are such a sensible child. Annie doesn't need to help. Just go and play." "Ah." Bella still said that. Tina was slightly startled and scratched her head awkwardly. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Jo-yalan said while cutting vegetables, "I've heard about your situation from Bella. Don't be so polite. We're all family. Coming here is like going home." Then she shouted out of the kitchen, "Bella, come here and bring little Tina over to play with you guys." Bella heard the sound, came to the kitchen, looked at Tina in front of her, and said, "You're here. I thought you went to the bathroom, come on." Bella reached out, grabbed Tina's wrist, and led her out of the kitchen. Tina recalled what she had just said and looked at Bella beside her. She still cares about what kind of person she is in Bella's heart. Since Bella would say that to her mother, it means that in Bella's heart, I am still pretty good, right? Tina was taken to her room by Bella. At this time, Jo-hung was sitting on a chair, reading a comic book on the table. As soon as she entered, Tina was dazzled by the various decorations in the room. If Jo-heng's room can be described as simple, then Bella's room can be described as rich. The posters on the wall, the display cabinet for figurines, and the various dolls and pillows on the bed make this room a very distinctive bedroom. Tina's eyes, the computer monitor looked no different than a TV. She had never seen one so big. Tina knew that Bella loved playing games, and even her keychains were decorated with small pendants from the games. But it seems that she still underestimated Bella's love for games. She always thought that most boys loved playing games. This was the first time she saw a girl who loved playing games so much. If this room was a boy's room, she would not be surprised and would think it was normal. "Oh." Tina couldn't help but sigh. Bella sat on the bed and said softly, "Just sit anywhere. The room is a bit messy, don't mind it." Tina chose to sit next to Bella. Although there were a lot of things in the room, it was not messy. At this time, Jo-hung also closed the comic book, turned to look at Tina, and said, "Since we are all here, I think we should look into the sports meeting now." Jo-hung glanced at Bella, who nodded and agreed with the idea. Now that the monthly exams are over, there is only a week left until the sports meet at the end of the month. There were many people who came to Jo-hung to sign up for the project these days, and he filled in the form. What needs to be decided now is the performance for the opening ceremony and what events he and Bella will sign up for. Ah, you're right. After all, I said that we should discuss the sports meeting after the monthly exam. It seems that other classes have almost made up their minds, and we are progressing slower. Tina almost forgot about such an important matter. She has been busy lately, so I forgot to think about it. Now that I think about it, there is still more than a week before the sports meet. Time does seem a bit tight, especially since nothing has been decided yet. So, what do you guys think? Tina looked at Johong and Bella. She felt that these two people were not easy to deal with. She had to do a good job of balancing and trying to keep both sides even. I thought they would argue again, but this time they shook their heads at the same time and said, I don't have any ideas. I'll listen to you. Just arrange it for us. Chapter 76. You don't want me to take over, do you? Really? Tina asked cautiously, somewhat unbelievingly, because the two of them almost quarreled over this matter before, and she was caught in the middle. As a result, now both of them gave in? They actually handed the decision-making power to me? Johong nodded and said, Yes, really, just decide whatever you want. We are all fine with it. Bella also nodded in agreement. This surprised Tina, but since both of them said so, it was certainly a good thing. At least we don't have to quarrel over such a small matter. Then, Tina arranged something for the two of them according to her inner thoughts. Since it is a competition, of course they have to be serious. Their class can firmly take first place in the exam, so they must strive to win first place in the sports meet. First of all, Joheng's shot put event is certain. Tina has absolute confidence in this and believes that Johong can win. Then it was Bella's long-distance running. Tina was also very confident. After discussion, Johong was signed up for a 100-meter dash and Bella was signed up for a 4x100-meter relay. Although Johong and Bella thought they could add a few more entries, it was no big deal for them and they were guaranteed to win the championship. But Tina still rejected their proposal, thinking that 2 projects each would be enough for them. It is also to give other students in the class a chance. Otherwise, if other classes find out, they will definitely gossip that except Johong and Bella, no one else in their class can get in. Then, the project is settled like this, is that okay? Tina asked for their opinions. Johong and Bella had no objections, so they nodded and replied,
Can.
Well, then the next thing is the performance at the opening ceremony. I remember last year the whole class did calisthenics, right? Tina recalled last year's sports meet, when they were still in their second year of high school, and the performance was decided by their class teacher, so they had no right to choose. The whole class did a simple dance together, just to muddle through. There would be awards for the performances at the opening ceremony, but they definitely had nothing to do with their class. Since they were allowed to decide for themselves this year, it would definitely be too late for a class performance like this. Not to mention that they can't decide on the type of performance. Even if everyone agrees, there won't be enough time for rehearsal. They are already tired enough from going to school every day, so it can only be performed by a few people or one person alone. Johong and Bella seem to have said before, what kind of performance? Tina looked at the two of them, thought for a while and asked, Is it really up to me to decide? Do you all agree? Johong and Bella nodded without hesitation. Then, Tina looked at Johong and asked, Then, Johong, who do you think is more suitable for the performance between the two of you from the perspective of the class? Johong frowned slightly and thought seriously. After a few seconds, he raised his hand and pointed at Bella beside him. Tina nodded, looked at Bella and asked, What about you? What do you think? Bella raised her hand and pointed at Johong. Such a result made Tina couldn't help but smile bitterly. These two people had argued so much before, but now they were so humble and both thought the other was better. If that's the case, then why did we argue in the first place? I was still trying to persuade him, which made me look so stupid at the time. How about this? You two play rock, paper, scissors. Whoever wins goes up, okay? Tina stepped away from the two of them and let them decide for themselves. Otherwise, if I let myself choose, I feel that some people will definitely not be willing to do so. I have no objection. I can do anything. The two of them agreed, and then played a non-competitive game of rock, paper, scissors in front of Tina. Bella, who won the duel. Okay, then it's decided that Bella will perform. Tina patted Bella's shoulder and made a hasty decision, fearing that there would be any changes. Bella suddenly thought of something, looked at Tina, smiled meaningfully, and said, "We both have things to do. What about you? Aren't you going to do something?" Tina pointed at herself, blinked, and asked, What can I do? I don't know how to do anything, and if I sign up for any event, I won't win?" Bella shook her head slightly and said, "I remember during the opening ceremony, didn't we need a girl to lead the team and hold a sign? That was the one Kelly did last year." "Ah, indeed. That one hasn't come yet. Wait, you don't want me to do it, do you?" "Of course. I think you are the only one suitable. What do you think?" Bella looked at Johong and asked for his opinion. Johong also nodded and said, softly. Tina didn't expect Johong to agree. She just wanted to pull Johong and Bella onto the boat, but she didn't expect to be pulled into the water. Okay, I'll do it. I can do it." She knew very well that she had no way to refuse. She had asked Johong and Bella to do so much, and it would not be good if she did nothing. Well, okay, now everything is decided, right? Can we play the game now? By noon, more than 3 hours had passed, and the kitchen was already filled with fragrance. Zhou Yalan brought the dishes to the table and then shouted towards the room, "Everyone, come out to eat." The three of them came out of the room and saw the delicious food on the table. Tina exclaimed again. Bella's mother made so many dishes by herself in just one morning. "Auntie, you have worked hard." Zhou Yalan smiled with narrowed eyes, moved a chair for Tina, and said, "It's not hard. I'm just happy that you can come. It's nothing." Johong sat down and asked, "Aunt, what time does my uncle get off work?" "He has to come around 8 p.m. I told him you guys were coming today, and he wanted to take a day off. He insisted that you accompany him for a drink. Next time, I'll come when my uncle is on break." Several people sat down and prepared to eat. At this moment, Tina received a message on her phone. She was a little confused. Who would send her a message at this time? She originally thought about not watching it while eating, but she was afraid it was sent by Zhou mother, Lu Wei, and she didn't want to miss it. So she quickly took out her cell phone and took a look. She didn't expect that it was Kelly who sent her the message. "Tina, for the sake of our 2 years of friendship, tell me the truth. What is your relationship with Johong? I haven't done anything to let you down, right? Just tell me directly." Chapter 77. She would go to whichever university Johong went to. What's wrong? Johong saw that Tina's face looked a little strange, so he asked, Nothing." Tina shook her head and did not tell Johong the message on her phone. She was afraid that it would affect Johong's mood. Tina thought about it and realized that even though there were differences between her and Kelly in the end, Kelly had never done anything to let her down. Moreover, she finally chose to break up with Kelly. In fact, a large part of it was because of her own selfish motives, and this selfish motive was Johong. She already liked Johong at that time, but since it was her first time to like someone, she didn't know how to react. But when Kelly said that she was going to frame Johong, she suddenly started to hate Kelly. She even doubted at the time whether she was a very fickle person. She had been so close to Kelly before, but now she had no good feelings towards her. Therefore, Tina decided to answer Kelly's question, which could be regarded as making up for the decision she had made out of selfishness. "We are not what you think. For some reason, I live in Johong's house. I am his mother's goddaughter. Do you like Johong?" Tina looked at the message Kelly replied to immediately on her phone and fell into deep thought. She understood why Kelly was so anxious to ask her this question. She just wanted to find out what she was thinking. If she said she didn't like him, Kelly wouldn't treat her as an enemy and ignore herself, and would pursue Johong even more vigorously. Because even though she admitted that she lived in Johong's house, Kelly didn't know that there were only the two of them in the house. She probably thought that Johong's parents were still at home, so even if she lived there, she would think that the two of them would not do anything too extreme at home. After all, their parents were there. This did not stop her from pursuing Johong. If she knew that she and Jo Hong were the only ones living at home, and that they were living in the same room and sharing the same bed, I wonder what she would think. After thinking for a while, Tina replied to Kelly, like dot. Cough. Suddenly, there was a cough behind Tina, which frightened her so much that she trembled all over and immediately turned her head to look at the person behind her. Bella was standing there, bending over and looking at her, and also glanced at her cell phone. Tina covered her phone awkwardly and asked hesitantly, what's the matter? Bella patted Tina's shoulder and said softly, you can't skip meals even if you have something to do. Eat first and deal with it later. At this time, Zhou Yalan asked in a low voice, what's wrong, little Tina? Is the food not to your liking? Then tell Annie what you want to eat, and I will make it for you. No. Auntie, the food is delicious. I just had something happen. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Tina quickly put her phone on the table, picked up her bowl and chopsticks, and continued eating. She forgot that they were eating at the table and was thinking of just taking a look at her phone and then putting it down, but she made a mistake without paying attention. Thanks to Bella for reminding me, otherwise her mother would definitely think too much. She cooked a big table of food, but I was looking down at my phone, which was very rude. Zhou Hong glanced at Tina from the side, with a hint of doubt in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. After dinner, the three of them helped Zhou Yalan clean up the table. They didn't help with the cooking because they knew it might cause more trouble and make things worse. But after dinner, you must help with the cleanup. After all, this is the most basic courtesy. After packing up, the three of them originally planned to go back to the room to continue playing games. But Zhou Yalan came out of the kitchen, wiped her hands, called Zhou Hong, and said, Xiao Hong, come. Annie wants to talk to you. Okay, all right. Zhou Hong nodded and stayed in the living room with Zhou Yalan, while Tina and Bella returned to their rooms. Zhou Yalan poured Zhou Hong a cup of tea, and Zhou Hong quickly stood up and took it, saying, Thank you, Annie. Sit down, Xiao Hong. Annie has something bothering me, and I've been wanting to talk to you about it. I want you to help me with some advice. Zhou Yalan took Zhou Heng's arm and sat on the sofa together. She sighed and looked sad, as if she was really troubled by something. Zhou Hong nodded and said, As long as I can help, I will definitely help. Is that so? It's the third year of high school now, and we'll graduate in 1 year. Your uncle and I have started to consider which university Bella should apply to. I don't have any objections, but your uncle really wants Bella to go to a 211 university. I don't remember the name of that university yet. Your uncle has a friend who is a professor there, and he wants to go to college outside. Wouldn't it be nice if someone could take care of her, especially with Bella's personality? Don't you think so? Yeah, I think it's pretty good. What's the worry? Zhou Hong was a little confused and didn't understand why he needed help. From Bella's grades, there will be no problem for her to be admitted to a 211 university. As long as she studies hard, getting into a 985 university will have no problem. It must be very stressful for other people, but for Bella, the pressure should not be that great, so she just needs to play fewer games. The point is, guess what Bella said? What did you say? She doesn't want to go? Zhou Yalan glanced in the direction of Bella's room, then lowered her voice and said in Zhou Heng's ear. She said that she would go to whichever university Zhou Hong went to. Zhou Heng's heart skipped a beat and his eyes widened in horror, his eyes full of disbelief. He really couldn't believe this was true, and looked at Zhou Yalan, who nodded in affirmation with a helpless look on her face. Don't think too much. It's not your fault. She is just being willful. We all know what she means. It's just that after going to college and arriving in a new environment, without you, no one will talk to her, and she won't be able to make friends. It's frustrating to be in college. Although Zhou Yalan said so, Zhou Hong knew that Bella just wanted to play games with him. She will be relaxed when she goes to college, and I will be relaxed too. Then I will definitely be able to play games with her to my heart's content. Zhou Hong pointed in the direction of the room and said, Then please persuade her, Auntie. College will definitely be different from high school. She will meet all kinds of people, and there will definitely be friends she can get along with. Look, Tina has made friends with her. Zhou Yalan sighed again, shook her head, and said, I've tried to persuade her, but it's useless. You know, we've never forced Bella to do anything since she was a child. It's definitely not going to work if we try to force her to go to a certain university now. Chapter 78, I can't confess my feelings. At least, not now. This. Zhou now finally understood why his aunt was worried. If it were him, he would definitely be very upset. If I could get into a good school, that would be fine. But with my current grades, I can't even get into a second-tier university, let alone a 985,211. Then can Bella still go to college with me? Then my aunt and uncle would definitely be so angry that they would die on the spot, and there would be no way to save them. Not to mention that they disagreed. He himself also disagreed, which would be a serious crime, delaying others' lives. He didn't want to be charged with this. Zhou nodded and said seriously, I understand, Aunt, I understand. Let's do this. I will persuade her another day. Zhou Yalin's eyes lit up. She raised her eyebrows and said quickly, Really? Xiaoheng, are you willing to persuade her? That's great. That child has been listening to you since she was young. If you are willing to persuade her, then Auntie will sincerely thank you. Nothing. This is what I should do. How are you going to persuade her? Every time we try to say something, she won't listen at all. Zhou touched his chin, thought for a while and said, Even if I can't persuade her, I can think of other ways. I can try to persuade Tina. With her grades, it's no problem for her to apply to the same university as Bella. Isn't she worried about no one playing with her in college? If Tina accompanies her, there shouldn't be any problem, right? When Zhou Yalan heard this, she gave Zhou a thumbs up and said, Oh, Xiaoheng may have a solution, but will Tina be willing? Well, I'll try to persuade her. I asked her before if she had thought about which university to go to. She doesn't have any goals yet. I'll talk to her when the time comes. Zhou was not sure whether Tina was willing to go to the same university as Bella. If she also said that she wanted to go to the same university as him, he would be confused. Two top-ranked high school students who could go to a double first-class university ended up going to the same university as this poor student. I feel like the principal will start to suspect that they came to the wrong school, and then he will personally go out to greet them and worship them. I will wake up laughing in my dreams. By then, he would have committed a great sin, especially for Tina. Zhou firmly believed that if he caused Tina to not go to a good university, he would definitely be killed by his mother. Maybe from now on, I will be banned from playing games and my living expenses will be cut off. Zhou Yalan nodded, showing a gratified expression, and then said, It would be great if you could go to that university with Bella and Tina. That would be the best outcome, right? Aunt, you're overthinking it. I can't pass the exam. With my grades, how can I go to that good university? Hey, why make a conclusion so early? Bella told me that you made great progress in this exam, and you've only been studying hard for such a short time, which is enough to prove that you're very smart. Anyway, there's still a year before the college entrance examination, so there are plenty of opportunities to overtake others during the holidays. If you study hard now, you will definitely succeed. Zhou Yalan patted Zhou Heng's hand and encouraged him. Zhou Heng couldn't help but feel a little dazed. For a moment, he actually wondered if he really had a chance of passing the exam. He has already found some ways in learning, and it can be said that learning is no longer so painful for him now. Can I do this? Of course you can do it. Isn't it true that you have made such great progress? Work hard. Strive to do better every time. Zhou Heng seemed to gain confidence in an instant. He sat up straight, nodded, and said seriously, I will. At this time in the room, Bella was not in a hurry to play games, but looked at Tina, who was sitting on the bed playing with her phone, looking thoughtful. Feeling Bella's gaze, Tina raised her head and asked in surprise, What's wrong? I say, who were you chatting with while eating just now? You even told others that you liked Zhou Heng. This? Tina hesitated for a long time and couldn't utter a single word. She didn't expect Bella to see it, but fortunately, only Bella saw it, and she had already known that she was interested in Zhou Heng. If others saw this, especially Zhou Heng, I would be so embarrassed. Kelly, she had the audacity to contact you, and it was because of Zhou Heng's matter? Tina nodded helplessly and said, she found out that I was living in Zhou house, and then she came to question what our relationship was. Then just tell her directly that you two are boyfriend and girlfriend, and let her give up. Anyway, if Zhou knew that this was to stop Kelly from bothering him, he would definitely agree. How can that be? I can't tell such a lie if I get caught. Then why don't you make it real? Wouldn't it be nice if you and Zhou were really together? Don't you like him anyway? Bella finished speaking. The room fell into silence. Tina lowered her head, not knowing what she was thinking. After a moment, she stammered. But, Zhou, are you afraid that he doesn't like you? I think there's a good chance that he likes you. Would you live under the same roof and sleep in the same bed with someone you don't like? Tina raised her head and said firmly, then I can't confess, at least, not now. Why? Because Mom is very happy to know that Zhou has made great progress in his studies. She really hopes that Zhou studies will get better and better. If I confess to him now and stay with him, it will definitely affect his studies. I can't do this. Tina said it firmly. There was still a hint of loneliness in her eyes. Bella saw it clearly. Kelly keeps pestering Zhou. Does it matter? You said you would affect his studies. First of all, this is not accurate. Being together doesn't necessarily affect his studies. Secondly, if Kelly keeps pestering him, don't you think that would affect his studies? Tina was silent again. She knew that even if she didn't confess to Zhou and didn't want to affect his studies, there would still be someone who would affect him. That person was Kelly. She was confused as to what to do. Seeing that Tina didn't speak, Bella stood up and said softly, Okay, I understand your thoughts. How about this? After all, I am Zhou desk mate. How about I find out what he thinks for you? If he really doesn't want to fall in love now, then I will tell you that you can wait. If he wants to fall in love and likes you, then I will try my best to get him to confess to you, okay? Chapter 79. Is there any way to separate the two of them? Bella's words surprised Tina. Is this really possible? I can take the initiative to confess, but will it really not affect Zhou studies? Tina was moved by Bella's proposal, but she still had some concerns. She didn't want to be the one who influenced Zhou, and she didn't want to disappoint Zhou's mother. These became her weaknesses, so she was so hesitant. I don't think so. If it affects his studies, doesn't that mean he has poor self-control? Do you think Zhou will? He can give up games and study hard every day. He can insist on cooking for himself every day and never be lazy to buy food. He insists on exercising and living alone and maintaining self-discipline. Doesn't this prove that he has strong self-control? That's true. Tina nodded and agreed with Bella. Indeed, she knew very well how strong Zhou self-control was. Few people could do these things. In comparison, it seems that only poor self-control will affect learning, but it is impossible for such a thing to happen to Zhou. So, what do you think? If you agree, I'll help you. If you insist on your idea, I don't mind. Bella spread her hands, smiled faintly, and asked Tina what she thought. Even though she asked this, she looked as if she already knew Tina's answer. Call? Tina took a deep breath and then exhaled. In this breath, she seemed to have made a decision. Then, she raised her head and looked at Bella with a firm look in her eyes. I want to be with Zhou. Please help me. I'll do anything for you. Bella nodded with satisfaction after getting a positive answer, sat down and said, He's much more suitable than that, Kelly. Bella finished speaking. Tina suddenly moved. She opened her arms and hugged Bella. In her ear, he whispered a few words. Thank you. Bella's eyes suddenly widened, revealing a blank expression. Her mind went blank. After being stunned for a few seconds, he spoke, stammering. This is nothing, I just think it's fun, just for fun. Tina let go of her hand and looked into her eyes. Her eyes moved slightly, with a faint smile in them. Thank you, too. Bella was stunned for a moment, then turned her head away and covered her face with her hair. What's wrong? Fine. Zhou and Tina stayed here until around 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Finally, Zhou left here on the pretext of going home to study. The two walked on their way home without saying a word, because each of them was thinking about something in their mind, something related to the other. Tina observed Zhou Heng's profile from time to time, thinking in her mind, if this really happened, would she and Zhou Heng be in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship? Then, can I sleep with Zhou Heng in my arms at night? Can I hold Zhou Heng's hand openly at school? Will Zhou Heng's attitude towards himself change by then? Will he talk more? Will he be better to himself? When Tina thought about this, she was very excited and even couldn't wait. I clearly said before that I didn't want to delay Zhou Heng's studies and couldn't confess to him. But now, after being persuaded by Bella, she was really looking forward to it. I said, Tina, what's wrong? Tina came to her senses after being called by Zhou Heng and looked at him. You said before that you didn't have any expectations for college, right? Then why don't you go to the same college as Bella? That college is pretty good. You will definitely be able to get in, and you'll have a companion. Really? Okay. So, what about you? Tina readily agreed at first, because it was a good thing to be in the same university with her good friend. But the next second, she thought of something more important, which was whether Zhou Heng would go to that university. She was just thinking about what would happen if she was with Zhou Heng. But they were in the third year of high school, which was the most important stage. Even if they are together, she cannot relax and still needs to focus on her studies. She just wants a status now, as long as the relationship is confirmed. Apart from that, she didn't want anything else, and she and Zhou Heng continued to live the same life as before until the college entrance examination was over. After entering college, it would be time for them to focus on dating, and she was particularly looking forward to that stage. But what if Zhou Heng is not in the same university as her? She would never allow this to happen. She must go to the same university as Zhou Heng, no matter what university it was. She could even not go to college, just find a job and take care of Zhou Heng's daily life. In short, she didn't want to be separated from Zhou Heng. Zhou Heng thought for a while and asked, Do you think I can get into the university you and Bella go to? There was a hint of self-mockery in Zhou Heng's words, making it hard to tell whether he was really asking or just asking knowingly. However, Tina still answered seriously. I think it's possible. Zhou Heng, you are very smart. As long as you are willing to learn, you can do it. Zhou Heng turned around and looked at Tina's serious and determined eyes, feeling a little surprised. He raised his eyes slightly, snorted and laughed and said, Okay, then please teach me and try to get me into the same university as you guys. Tina smiled brightly upon hearing this and nodded heavily. At night, the two of them stayed at home, studying until late at night, and it seemed that they had already regarded getting into that university as their ultimate goal. Under Tina's guidance, Zhou Heng gained confidence and felt that he had a chance. As long as you seize every moment, you can make up for the lost progress. On Monday, the day of school, students struggled to get up, carrying backpacks that were almost as heavy as themselves, and left their homes like zombies, walking towards school. Kelly was listless when she left the house. Not only did she get scolded by her parents for doing so poorly on the test, what bothered her even more was that her former best friend had become her love rival.
Ý liker Zhou Heng.
I started with the easy mode, lived with him, went to school together every day, and my clearance rate was almost 100%. I rejected him for 2 years and got the hell mode, with a clearance rate of almost 0. Now, Kelly's mentality has changed. From the beginning, she wanted to get close to Zhou Heng. Now it has become that he wants Tina to stay away from Zhou Heng. Alas, is there any way to separate the two of them? Chapter 80. That's enough. This is my confession. Well, what's wrong with you? What are you worried about? Because you didn't do well in the exam? Did your family say something to you? Tian patted Kelly on the shoulder. Seeing her listless look, he thought she was frustrated because she didn't do well in the exam. But Kelly shook her head, stretched out her hand, and pointed in the direction of the classroom. Tian looked over and saw Tina sitting in front of Zhou Heng and Bella. The three of them were eating and chatting, and they looked very harmonious. Tina often has a smile on her face and seems to be much happier than when she plays with herself. Tian immediately understood what Kelly was worried about. It turned out that she was jealous. Seeing her former best friend now having other friends and being so happy, wasn't this also a kind of NTR? Oh, don't be sad. I didn't expect Bella to be so good at bewitching people. She actually deceived Tina so thoroughly. Not really. The main reason Tina went there was because of Jo Hong. Tian Run looked at Kelly in surprise, not knowing what she meant by that. Does this mean that Tina likes Jo Hong? How did the two of them get involved again? Although I don't understand what the relationship between them is, however, I advise you not to get involved. Participate. Kelly looked in the direction of the three people, a little dazed, with dull eyes, and muttered, I have to be able to participate? Until now, the like Tina replied to her yesterday is still echoing in her mind. She didn't expect Tina to be so frank, and to say so frankly that she liked Jo Hong. Even she couldn't do it. It was as if the last piece of fig leaf could never be torn off. Until now, she could only watch Tina appear frequently beside Jo Hong, and her relationship with him became better and better, far better than her own. There's no point in worrying because you can't do anything. After school in the evening, Kelly saw Tina and Jo Hong leave together. When she thought that they were going back to the same home, her heart felt as if it was being squeezed. She walked out of the school gate, thinking about these things as she walked, absent-mindedly. She didn't even notice that there was a person standing in front of her. Snapped. The person standing in front of me is a boy, wearing glasses and with a neat hairstyle. He looks like a good student. The boy slowly opened his mouth and said softly, Classmate, I have something to tell you. Can I spend a while? Liao Hao Miao from Class 1? The boy was a little surprised, raised his eyebrows and asked, Do you know me? Nonsense, you're the top student in the grade. Who wouldn't know you? Isn't there a picture of you hanging in the corridor? In that case, I don't need to introduce myself to you. Can I take up a moment of your time and chat with you? Liao Hao Miao walked forward and got closer to Kelly, which made her a little nervous. What do you want to talk about? Liao Hao Miao put his hands in his pockets and said calmly, You are Tina's good friend, right? Can you please ask her out for me? I want to confess my love to her. Kelly's eyes widened. She was stunned for a moment. Her mouth opened wide. No. What did you suddenly say? What's wrong? I mean, I like Tina and I want to confess my feelings to her. Can you do me a favor? I will reward you. Liao Hao Miao didn't know why Kelly reacted so strongly, but he remained calm, as if he was talking about something insignificant. Kelly calmed herself down and said, Your news is too corny. She and I are no longer friends. Besides, I advise you not to waste your time. She already has someone she likes, someone from our class. Hearing this news, Liao Hao Miao didn't seem too surprised. He was silent for a while, then continued, It's okay. As long as we're not together yet, then I have a chance. Sorry to bother you. After saying this, he turned around and prepared to leave. Kelly's mouth twitched. She couldn't believe that there were such optimistic people. No, you don't have any chance. They are already living together. Living together. Liao Hao Miao turned his head and looked at Kelly with a puzzled look on his face. After a moment, his brows relaxed and he said, It's okay. I don't care. I don't have a virgin complex. Damn, you're invincible, kid. That's not the problem. The point is that the rice has already been cooked. Is it necessary for you to interfere? Have they announced that they are officially together? Without. That means having substance but no name. Let me ask you, in this era, do you think it is more important to have substance or to have a name? At least in my eyes, they are equally important. The one who has substance but no name is a mistress, so it is necessary for me to get involved. Liao Hao Miao's words were so righteous that Kelly was speechless for a moment and had no way to refute it. Normally, most people would give up when they hear that there is someone they like, right? Who would be so optimistic knowing that the other person is already living with someone else? It's really against the will of heaven to do something. I didn't expect that the top genius in the grade would have such special ideas. But, Kelly thought, what if he really can do it? After all, he is the top student in the grade. So there must be a lot of people who like him, right? No matter how good Jo Hong is, his grades are flawed. No matter how much he improves, he will never catch up with Tina's grades. She is such a good student. She shouldn't find a boyfriend who is such a bad student. Wouldn't someone like Liao Haomiao be a good choice? If Liao Haomiao succeeded, wouldn't that mean he would have successfully separated Zhou and Tina? Hey, wait a minute. Kelly quickly chased after him. She thought this idea was feasible. Tina and Zhou been together? Even if she likes him, she definitely doesn't like him so thoroughly. Since she likes Zhou, it's normal for her to like someone else, right? When she thought about it this way, she felt that Liao Haomiao might really have some chance. Liao Haomiao was stopped by Kelly, turned his head to look at her and asked, "Anything else? I think you have a good chance too. Let me help you. What's your plan?" Liao Haomiao frowned slightly and muttered, "Plan? What do you mean? Aren't you going to confess your feelings? You don't have any plans? What plans do you need? If you really like someone, you should confess your feelings openly. I don't have to be with her. I just want her to know that someone is attracted by her personality. That's enough. This is my confession." Chapter 81. Is it still called hooliganism if both parties are willing? No, buddy. Are you okay? You're definitely going to fail if you confess like this. Are you sure you don't want to make a plan? First, increase your presence in her heart, then increase her favorability, and then finally confess your feelings. Kelly was so surprised that her mouth was wide open. If you didn't know better, you would think the person in front of her was not the same age as her. Don't you think before you speak? If you confess your feelings to someone you don't know well, no one will agree. However, Kelly's kind words of advice did not seem to be recognized by Liao Haomiao. He shook his head and said, "It's my business that I like her, and if she doesn't like me, that's her business. She is not my choice after weighing the pros and cons, but my determination to do it even though I know it's impossible after my heart was pounding. Confessing my feelings directly is my greatest sincerity." After Liao Haomiao finished speaking, he turned around and left resolutely. From his back, one could tell how determined he was, as if nothing could change his mind. Kelly was completely dumbfounded and stood there in a daze, as if she had just heard some incredible remarks. I even started to wonder if I was dreaming, if all this was fake. It's really a ghost at this time of night? Kelly didn't pay much attention to this guy. She thought he could be of some use, but it seemed like he was just here to make people laugh. By the time she went to school the next day, she had already forgotten it. Zhou arrived at school early and sat in his seat. Ever since he made up his mind to get into a good university, studying was the only thing on his mind. As for the purpose, it is definitely for the purpose of having fun. He thinks it is reasonable to study for the purpose of having fun. During the morning self-study session, Zhou was concentrating on doing his homework. Bella asked from the side, "What do you and Tina do when you go home at night? Is she the only one who teaches you to study?" Zhou raised his head, looked at Bella in confusion, then nodded and said, "Well, I exercise occasionally, maybe once every 2 or 3 days, and the rest of the time, I study almost all the time." Zhou thought about last night. They also studied until late at night. He felt that his tutoring speed was already very fast. If he were to take a test right now, his ranking would definitely rise a lot. Tina, who has such good grades, as our teacher, she is also good at teaching, so it is reasonable that my studies will be more effective with less effort. You are so boring. There is a beautiful girl living in your house. Are you really indifferent? Bella's words made Zhou stop writing and look in Tina's direction. He knew that Tina was indeed very pretty. Although the whole school didn't know, she was definitely the most beautiful girl in the class. Especially since she had such a good personality and temper, almost half of the boys in the class liked her, but they just didn't dare to say it out loud. Because of Lu Yunshua's presence before, he was the first to step forward, which discouraged others. His advantage was that he helped Tina block many suitors. Zhou retracted his gaze, glanced at Bella, and said, "What else do you want? Taking advantage of someone's misfortune? They are just staying here as guests. I don't want to go from doing good deeds to being a hooligan." How do you know she doesn't want to? If both parties agree, is it still considered hooliganism? Zhou frowned, slowly put down the pen in his hand, and looked at Bella deeply. What do you mean? Are you going to ask me if I like Tina next? Look, aren't you very smart? Because you two seem to have talked a lot about love yesterday, and I was wondering at the time why you two would be interested in such a topic. It turns out you were setting a trap for me. Bella shrugged. A sly smile appeared on the corner of her mouth and continued to ask, So, what's your answer? This sentence seemed to have stabilized Jo-hong. He was completely silent, not saying a word, his pupils trembling from time to time, as if he was thinking seriously. Bella didn't rush him, but just waited quietly for his answer. After a long time, Jo-hong took a deep breath and said, I feel more sympathy for her. Her experiences and her situation make me sympathize with her. If I can do more for her, that would be the best. Jo-hong looked at Tina as back. In his mind, the scene of the day he brought Tina home emerged, as well as every day and every event that happened after that. He remembered them clearly. The clearest thing was probably the night a few days ago, when my mother adopted Tina as her goddaughter. He saw how insecure Tina was and how much she longed to feel the warmth of her family again. He made a bold decision. He pretended to sleep at night, then turned around and hugged her gently. He felt that Tina needed this. At least it would allow her to feel that someone was with her, and she didn't need to worry about being alone again. Bella tilted her head and looked at Jo-hong with some surprise in her eyes. Like or dislike, can't you choose? She didn't understand what Jo-hong said. What did it have to do with what she asked? She asked him whether he liked Tina, and he told her out of sympathy? Jo-hong suddenly looked at Bella, frowning. His eyes were deep and hot. Do you know why I pursued Kelly for 2 years? Why? It's because I have no idea what love is, how it feels to like someone. I can't get in touch with that aspect. That's my blind spot, and it limits my imagination. I can't imagine what would happen if I really caught up with her. It's like the poor imagine that the emperor is nothing more than digging the land with a golden hoe, and I might just want to be with Kelly and take her to play games. Playing games? Bella blinked, looking confused. Don't the couple she imagined have a lot to do together? They are so close and intimate every day. But how could Jo-hong have thought of playing games with the other party? Apart from this, did he have no other thoughts? So, you still don't understand now? Jo-hong shook his head and responded, I don't understand. If I say that I want to play games with Tina, does that mean I like her? What kind of mood can prove that I like her? I don't even know this, so how can I tell you whether I like Tina or not? Bella leaned back in her chair, crossed her legs, covered her mouth with her hands, and frowned, as if she was thinking about a complicated problem. After a while, she looked at Jo-hong, took a breath, and said, Well, if that's what you said, then you actually never liked Kelly from the beginning to the end. Chapter 82, but I'm not sure whether I like you or not. Really? Maybe. After hearing this, Jo-hong's reaction was very calm, as if this result was not surprising to him at all. However, it was quite surprising to Bella. Bella thought Jo-hong liked Kelly very much, but in fact, he himself didn't understand what love was. He didn't know whether he really liked her or not, so he pursued her for 2 years? No wonder he could give up so easily without any hesitation. Logically speaking, to give up so decisively, he had to be reborn, right? But it turns out that he doesn't like Kelly at all. These 2 years were just a test of his feelings. Liking someone isn't that complicated, right? It's just a feeling of wanting to be with the other person. There's no need to think too much about it. Just tell me, if I let you be with Tina, would you be willing? That's nonsense. Of course I would. She's good at studying and pretty. How could I not want to be with her? There are so many girls in the world who are both good at studying and pretty. How can I like every one of them? If I don't like Tina, then we will break up sooner or later. Wouldn't that be a secondary injury to her? Piske. This also touches on my blind spot in knowledge. I can answer everything for you, but I really don't understand feelings. Bella covered her forehead helplessly. She had originally wanted to test Jo-hong's attitude according to the plan. By the way, I brought him and Tina together, but now she realized that she was not cut out for this. She knew nothing about it, so how could she bring others together? She originally thought it was an easy problem to solve. After all, If he didn't like her, how could he still sleep in the same bed with her? But then I thought, they've slept together, but nothing has happened yet. So do they really like each other? The person you like is right next to you, but you are still indifferent. It's impossible, right? Alas, I don't understand either. Isn't this just a matter of groping your way through it slowly? Johong sighed, raised his head, and found Tina was secretly looking at him. After their eyes met, she gave a coquettish smile and quickly turned her head away. Johong lowered his head, picked up the pen, and prepared to continue working on the questions. However, after staring at the exercise book for dozens of seconds, he couldn't write a single word. At noon, Tina came to eat with the two of them. Johong said nothing and concentrated on eating without even looking up. Tina lowered her voice and whispered in Bella's ear, "What's wrong?" Bella just shook her head and didn't answer her question. Tina was also confused and finished her lunch in this weird atmosphere. After lunch, Bella and Tina were going to the bathroom together. Walking in the corridor, Tina observed whether the surrounding environment was safe and then asked in a low voice, "How is it? Can you help me find out what Johong means?" Bella touched her nose awkwardly and replied, "This situation may be a little unexpected." Unexpected? What do you mean? It's just. Johong's thoughts are a little unclear now, but I at least understand one thing, that is, Johong has never liked Kelly from the beginning to the end. He pursued Kelly just to figure out whether he really likes her. Ah. Tina was silent in surprise. Shouldn't she be asking about her own affairs? Why did she bring Kelly into the picture? So, does he like me or not? If I confess to him, will it work? It should be successful, but I'm not sure whether he likes you or not. Well, Tina listened, the more confused she became. If she should be able to succeed, then why wasn't she sure whether she liked it or not? Is it possible to accept my own confession even if I don't like it? Just when Tina wanted to ask something, a person appeared in front of them, blocking their way. The two men stopped and looked at the person in front of them. It was obvious that he was blocking their way on purpose. "Tina, can I bother you for a moment? You are Liao Haomiao from Class 1, right?" Tina recognized the person in front of her. After all, he was a well-known figure in the entire grade. His pictures were often hung in the corridors, so it was hard not to see him. Everyone knows her because she is the top student in the grade, but not many people know her because she is the third. So Tina was very confused. Why did he know her, and what did he want from her? When Liao Haomiao saw that Tina recognized him, he smiled, nodded, and said, "Ah, yes, I have something to tell you. Is that okay?" Tina nodded and said, "Ah, you tell me." Bella on the side frowned slightly, feeling something was not right, and had a bad premonition. Liao Haomiao straightened his collar and said, "It's like this. We were in the same examination room for the last monthly exam. I don't know if you still remember that I sat next to you. Even though we didn't know each other at all, you smiled politely after accidentally making eye contact with me. Your every move made my heart beat faster, and then I fell in love with you." Liao Haomiao's words made the scene silent instantly. In particular, they were not the only ones in the corridor. Students passing by also heard these words. Tina was already stunned at this time, her eyes full of disbelief. Bella's mouth twitched, her eyebrows jumped wildly, and she couldn't speak. This was the first time she had encountered such a thing. When she was about to go to the bathroom after lunch, she met someone who confessed his love to her. It was as if this person was sitting in the classroom just now, and after seeing Tina passing by through the window, he immediately put down what he was holding, ran over, and confessed his love. It was so sudden and hasty that it was hard to believe it was true. Liao Haomiao took a step forward, and Tina immediately took a step back in fright. Then he continued, "I heard that you have someone you like now, but I still hope you can give me a chance. I will do my best to give you whatever you want. I will work hard towards the type you like, and I will change the type you don't like." The students passing by had stopped and stood by, joining in the fun, whispering and mumbling something. But Liao Haomiao seemed to ignore it completely, not caring about other people's eyes and words at all. However, Liao Haomiao can ignore it, but Tina can't.
Ah, no.
That. Now, Her face is as red as a red pepper. Her shoes are rubbing against the floor, and she once wanted to escape from here. She was completely in an awkward situation. She didn't even dare to look up and could only stare at the ground. Bella realized this and was about to stand up and speak for Tina. But the next second, a hand suddenly reached out. He grabbed Tina's wrist and took her away from this place of trouble without saying a word. Tina was caught off guard and was startled. She raised her head quickly. When she saw the person in front of her, a gleam of joy flashed in her eyes. Jo-hong. Chapter 83, Why Don't You Just Be Her Boyfriend? Everyone was shocked by this sudden scene, and they all leaned over to look in the direction they left. Liao Haomiao was the same. Looking at that back, his heart could not calm down for a long time, while Bella smiled, her eyes full of relief. So, is this the person Tina likes? Liao Haomiao muttered softly, but his eyes narrowed, and there was a hint of coldness in his deep pupils. The people present were all sympathizing with Liao Haomiao. This scene put him in a very embarrassing situation. But Liao Haomiao himself didn't take it seriously. He didn't seem to be affected at all, and went back to the classroom expressionlessly. It made people sigh at his strong psychological quality. Jo-hong glanced behind him and saw that no one was chasing him, so he let go of his hand. His restless heart calmed down, and he realized that he seemed to have done something unexpected. He didn't know what happened. He was sitting in the classroom just now. When he thought of Tina and Bella leaving the classroom, he followed them out inexplicably. Not long after they walked, they saw Liao Haomiao stopping them. After hearing what Liao Haomiao said, he just felt a little unhappy. So without thinking anything, I took Tina away. Tina whispered behind Jo-hong. Thank you. Otherwise it would be difficult for me to get away. There was a faint smile on her lips. When she thought of the scene where Jo-hong took her away just now, she felt extremely happy. It was as if there was a miniature version of myself inside me, jumping for joy. Although I don't know what Jo-hong thinks, since he did this, it proves that he still cares about himself. Jo-hong did not turn around and answered softly. It's okay. Just don't mind your own business. After he said this, I felt a little familiar. Looking back, when I took Tina home, I seemed to have said that I was meddling in other people's business. However, later events proved that it was right for me to meddle in other people's affairs. Tina looked so haggard before. She almost exuded sadness and had no energy. But now Tina seems to have returned to the past, before the incident. Jo-hong felt that he had done a pretty good job to help her recover to this state. The classroom in the afternoon was quite lively as soon as the class was over. I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional, but there were always a lot of people around Tina. Some boys seemed to have to play around in front of Tina, but no one knew whether they were trying to attract attention. Bella patted Jo-hong's shoulder, pointed at Tina and said, Look. Jo-hong looked up and saw a boy giving Tina something. Although Tina quickly refused and tried to hand it back, the boy left quickly without giving her a chance to refuse. Yeah, I'm popular. What's wrong? Jo-hong nodded, looking unconcerned. Before, Lu Yunshua stood in front of Tina. Although he couldn't pursue her, others didn't dare to pursue her when he was around. Now that Lu Yunshua is gone, those boys who like Tina can't sit still. Then there will be more people chasing her. Jo-hong looked up at Bella with a surprised look on his face and asked, Then what? You don't want me to take over Lu Yunshua's position, do you? From now on, you are the most suitable. Jo-hong shook his head and said, Why should I stop someone's suitor? I don't have the right to do that. Lu Yunshua is already hated so much. Do you want me to be hated too? Then why don't you just be her boyfriend? Don't you have the right to do so? Jo-hong looked at Bella with doubt in his eyes and his brows seemed to be locked. No. Are you really Bella? You're not the kind of person who would be interested in this kind of thing. Why have you been talking about this topic all the time today? Even if he wanted to play dumb and pretend he didn't know, Bella was too obvious. Normally, we would never talk about this kind of topic, but today, it seemed as if we would not stop until we got together with Tina. Bella also realized that she had gone too far. She had to be careful when bringing up this topic in front of Jo-hong. If I accidentally make him unhappy, there is nothing I can do. Okay, I won't say any more. Just keep it in mind. Bella waved her hand and let it go, not mentioning it again. Zhou Heng snorted heavily through his nose, looking very helpless. But when he wanted to start studying again, his mind was in a mess and he had no mood to study at all. SK, I'll take a nap. Zhou Heng threw the pen aside and lay down on the table, preparing to sleep in school after a long absence. When Zhou Heng had just laid down, Tina saw this scene. Her eyes suddenly widened, her pupils trembled, and she quickly stood up and walked towards Zhou Heng's seat. Just as she was about to get closer, Bella suddenly raised her hand and stopped her. She understood what he meant and stood there, somewhat at a loss. Tina put her hand on her forehead, pretending to test her body temperature. This is to ask Bella if Zhou Heng is feeling unwell? Because she hadn't seen Zhou Heng sleeping in school for a long time. Whenever she looked at him, he was studying. But when she suddenly saw him lying down, Tina couldn't help but worry. Was Zhou Heng not feeling well? Bella also understood what he meant. She shook her head, then raised her chin a little and closed her eyes. Tina breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that Zhou Heng was just taking a rest. Her heartbeat quickened with worry just now. She thought that if Zhou Heng was not feeling well, she would take him home immediately. Tina adjusted her slightly disordered breathing and walked back. Bella's mouth corners slightly raised, and she turned to look at Zhou Heng. He was lying sideways on the table, his face facing Bella. He didn't even close his eyes at this time. He also saw all of Bella's actions just now. Bella seemed to know this as well. When she looked at him, she chuckled and said nothing. However, their eyes seemed to convey a lot of communication. Zhou Heng then closed his eyes and took a short nap. After school in the evening, Bella quickly packed up her things, stood up and said, "We have a guild war tonight. I'm leaving now and won't wait for you guys." Let's go." Zhou Heng nodded and watched Bella leave in a hurry. Then he packed up his things and prepared to leave the classroom. But when he reached the classroom door, he stopped. I turned around and looked at Tina, who was still hurriedly packing her things. In the past, he always went on his own and never waited for Tina. Once Tina has finished packing, she will catch up with him. But today, he stopped at the door and waited there quietly. Chapter 84, but I think you need to talk to me now. After packing her things, Tina quickly picked up her bag and walked out the door. Because she knew that if she didn't hurry up, she would not be able to catch up with Zhou Heng. But when she took a few steps and looked forward, she froze in place when she saw Zhou Heng standing at the door. Suddenly, he blinked a few times, his mouth slightly opened, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. She didn't expect that Zhou Heng didn't leave, but was waiting here. Was he waiting for her? "Let's go," Zhou Heng said softly, then turned around and walked out of the classroom. Tina was sure that Zhou Heng was waiting for her. Her eyebrows raised slightly, then she smiled charmingly and quickly followed him. Coming to Zhou Heng's side, Tina whispered, "Thank you." "Thank you for what?" "Thank you for waiting for me. Is this something worth being thankful for?" "Yes." The two of them were talking quietly, and Zhou Heng felt very strange, as if he had never felt this way before. Even though this was not the first time he walked side by side with Tina, he always felt that this feeling was strange. The two were walking on the way home. The road was very dark at night, but fortunately the street lights were bright, illuminating the road ahead. Zhou Heng seemed to have emptied himself out, just walking without thinking about anything. But Tina is different. She has a lot of things on her mind now. "I am hesitating and struggling." Bella's words today. She went back to the classroom and thought. Since she said that her confession should be successful, it means that Zhou Heng doesn't hate being in a relationship with her, right? In addition, Zhou Heng also helped me out. You should know that I was not the only one there at the time. Bella was also there. So even if Zhou Heng didn't show up, Bella could still protect herself and get out of this situation safely. The appearance of Zhou Heng filled her with confidence. No matter what the result is, it's already like this. Why don't you confess? What are you waiting for? Especially after school at night, Zhou Heng would deliberately wait for me, which had never happened before. Then now should be the best time. "Zhou Heng," Tina suddenly called out, then took a step forward, turned around and stood in front of Zhou Heng, looking at him steadily. Zhou Heng also recovered from his daze, stopped, and looked at Tina in front of him with a blank face. Well? Tina took a deep breath, then closed her eyes and exhaled, looked at Zhou Hong, and spoke slowly. I want to say I snapped. At this moment, a snap of fingers suddenly came, interrupting Tina's words. They both looked towards the source of the sound and found that someone had stood under the streetlight. They all knew that person. Zhou Hong frowned and recognized him at a glance. Wasn't that Liao Haomiao who confessed to Tina at noon? What is he doing here? Want to confess his love to Tina? Tina also took 2 steps back and hid behind Zhou Hong. Fortunately, Zhou Hong was by her side. If she had walked this road alone and saw Liao Haomiao standing here, she would definitely be scared. Liao Haomiao walked over slowly, his eyes fixed on Zhou Hong in front of him, without even looking at Tina. What? Zhou Hong asked. His tone was not good, and even had a hint of hostility. Liao Haomiao stood in front of Zhou Hong and said calmly, not to pick a fight, just to chat. Chat? With me? Zhou Hong pointed at himself and asked in disbelief. He thought Liao Haomiao came to see Tina. What was he talking about with him? Could it be that what happened at noon made him feel that I was his love rival, so he wanted to talk to me? Tina was worried. She thought the other party was here to cause trouble. So she reached out and gently pulled the corner of Zhou Hong's clothes. Zhou Hong moved a little, completely blocking Tina behind him. Liao Haomiao tilted his head, snorted and laughed, and said, with your physique, are you still afraid of me? How stupid do I have to be to cause trouble? I am just a nerd, but I think you need to talk to me now. What's the meaning? Zhou Hong realized something was wrong and his face suddenly darkened. He looked at Liao Haomiao in front of him. His purpose didn't seem to be simple. It wasn't what he thought. And you said you need to talk to him now? What can you talk to him about? Why don't you chat? It won't do you any harm. Just the 2 of us, just chat alone. Liao Haomiao took 2 steps back and pushed his glasses, as if he was ready to leave immediately after Zhou Hong refused. Although Zhou Hong felt it was strange, he felt that he had no ill intentions. Even if there is malicious intent, is there any need to be afraid? If he wants to talk, then let him talk. This is a good opportunity to put his mind at ease and stop bothering Tina in the future. Okay. Zhou Hong raised his chin and agreed casually. Tina behind him and said softly, you go home first. I'll be back soon. As he said that, he handed the key in his hand to her. Tina took the key with a worried look on her face. Let's just ignore him. Let's just go. It's okay. I'll just help you reject him formally so he won't bother you anymore. Zhou Hong comforted her softly, then motioned for her to go first. Tina was a little hesitant, but she still listened to Zhou Hong's words, took the key, and left the place without looking back. After Tina left, Zhou Hong walked over, looked at Liao Haomiao and asked, tell me, what do you want to talk about? Liao Haomiao glanced behind him, in the direction Tina left, and slowly said, just now, Tina wanted to confess to you. I sensed it and interrupted her on purpose. Do you blame me? Oh. Zhou Hong showed a thoughtful expression and frowned slightly. Tina trying to confess her feelings to herself just now? He didn't even hear it, but this guy did? Liao Haomiao reached into his pocket as if to take something out and continued. Tina with an indecisive attitude, so I stood up. I didn't want to see her sad. As he spoke, Liao Haomiao took out an unopened pack of cigarettes from his pocket. After he opened it, he took out one and handed it to Zhou Hong. Zhou Hong waved his hand and said, I don't smoke. Then I'm sorry, I guessed wrong. I thought you would smoke, and I don't smoke either. I bought it especially for you. Liao Haomiao stuffed the cigarette back and threw it into the trash can beside him. Zhou Hong was not interested in this kind of thing at all. He kept thinking about what Liao Haomiao had just said, wondering why he knows all this. He knew that Tina wanted to confess her love to him just now, and even guessed that he would refuse. Chapter 85. There is no definition or standard for love. Zhou Hong slowly let down his guard. He felt that what Liao Haomiao wanted to talk about might not be that simple. What do you want to say in the end? I just want to ask you, what makes you hesitant? Are you not sure whether you like Tina or not? Liao Haomiao's words hit the nail on the head, and Zhou Hong couldn't help but feel a little scared. I'm not familiar with him at all, and we've never had any contact before, But how could he express what's on his mind in just one sentence? Zhou Heng calmed himself down and asked calmly, "What does it have to do with you?" Liao Haomiao spread his hands and said, "It's okay. I'm just meddling in other people's business. I thought you needed someone to talk to. I spent the whole afternoon asking about you and found out that you don't have many friends. Under such circumstances, you can't talk to others about many of your inner thoughts. You must have a lot of questions that you don't have answers to, so I came here." Zhou Heng was speechless for a moment. His tongue seemed to be tied. This guy is too talkative. I don't know how to refute him for a moment. Even after he finished speaking, I felt for a moment that what he said was right. Of course, I told you I was meddling, and if you didn't like it, I apologized immediately and left. But I want you to remember one thing.
What?
Zhou Heng raised his head and looked at Liao Haomiao in confusion. Liao Haomiao was silent for a few seconds and then said, "Either accept it or keep your distance. Otherwise, it will be a nuisance to both parties." Troubled? What do you mean? Liao Haomiao took off his glasses, took out a glasses cloth from his pocket, and wiped them while saying, "If you don't like Tina, you should keep your distance from her. Have you ever thought about what the girl you like in the future, or the girl who likes you, will think after knowing that you are living with Tina? Similarly, if you don't plan to be responsible for Tina's second half of her life, don't make her future husband feel upset. Although I don't care, there are many people who do." Zhou Heng's eyes were sharp and his eyebrows were slightly wrinkled. He listened to Liao Haomiao's words as if he suddenly understood something. "I only felt sorry for Tina and did things to help her, but I didn't think about these things. You rejected her, but still lived with her. Even if you didn't do anything, it's inevitable that something ambiguous would happen under the same roof, right? It's real but not nameless. You're just hurting the heart of someone who likes you. Even if Tina is willing, as a man, can you do this?" Liao Haomiao put on his glasses, walked forward, and patted Zhou Heng on the chest. The words were so powerful that Zhou Heng fell silent and could not utter a word. I kept questioning myself in my heart, am I really hurting Tina now? But if I can't figure out whether I like her or not, wouldn't I be hurting her then? Liao Haomiao smiled and continued, "Do you feel like you need someone to talk to you now?" Zhou Heng sighed and asked cautiously, "What good will this do for you?" "It's no good. Didn't I say that? I just don't want to see Tina sad. My feelings for her have already ended here. In the end, I want to protect her smile. Is that wrong?" Zhou Heng turned around and looked at the street lamp in front of him. He stared at the light source until his eyes hurt, then he looked away. He was silent for a long time, and no one knew what he was thinking. After about 2 or 3 minutes, he spoke. "How do you think you like Tina? How do you know that you really like her? There is no definition or standard for liking someone. If you think you like someone, then that's what you like. But I still don't understand." Zhou Heng took 2 steps forward, staring at Liao Haomiao in front of him, and said with some excitement, "I once pursued a girl for 2 years, but just because no one paid attention to me in junior high school, she did. So I thought I liked her. I didn't even know what would happen if I really pursued her. Would I take her to play games? Let her see the skins and equipment I spent a lot of money on? Would she think I was awesome and fall in love with me? Obviously not. How can I maintain the relationship? How can I know if I like her?" Liao Haomiao stretched out his hand, pushed away the emotional Zhou Heng, pushed up his glasses, and said, "Let me tell you what I think. After all, I do have some experience in love. I fell in love when I was in junior high school and dated the person for a year." Zhou Heng was stunned for a moment, took a step back, and looked at Liao Haomiao in confusion. "Junior high school? What did you know then? What ideas could you have?" Liao Haomiao leaned against the wall, looked at the night sky, and said, "At that time, after being with her, I would feel very happy whenever I thought of her. Even if I was sad today, I would feel full of energy when I thought of her. I would share with her any interesting, happy, or sad things I encountered. I would always think about what she was doing. I would inexplicably want to get closer to her. My eyes would always stay on her. When I saw her interacting with me a little bit, I would be very happy and the corners of my mouth would unconsciously rise." Zhou Heng also stood next to Liao Haomiao, leaning against the wall, listening quietly. When he heard these words, he felt as if he understood something in his heart. But more than that, I was afraid that she would show an expression or tone of impatience towards me, that she would deliberately avoid me, that I would be affected by her every move, that I would be jealous of a member of the opposite sex, that she would hate me and despise me. I wanted her to know what I was thinking, but I was afraid that I was being too sentimental. In general, it's really wonderful to like someone. There's something to rely on in your heart, a dawn, a direction, and you move towards her. At that moment, you will really admit that you are a love-brained person. Liao Haomiao's thin lips lifted slightly, with a gentle smile, and the corners of his eyes curved slightly. Zhou Heng felt very strange and asked, "What happened next? Since you liked her so much, why didn't you continue to be with her?" Liao Haomiao turned his head and looked at Zhou Heng with a light smile on his face. Later, her mother found out that my grades in junior high school were very poor. Her mother told her not to hang out with people who didn't study well. She even came to my house and said that I was hindering her daughter's studies. Then she separated us. Zhou Heng was stunned for a moment, with a flash of surprise in his eyes. Seeing Liao Haomiao say this so easily, coupled with his current achievements, it is hard to imagine how hard he has worked since then. However, no matter how hard you try, you can't get it back. Zhou Heng reached out his hand, patted Liao Haomiao on the shoulder, and comforted him. If her family knew you were doing so well in school now, they would probably be surprised. If she hadn't broken up with me, I wouldn't have achieved what I have now. It was all because I didn't work hard enough. After Liao Haomiao finished speaking, he looked at Zhou Heng and asked, "How is it? Is it helpful to you? Do you understand what it feels like to like something?" Chapter 86. I like you. Will you be my boyfriend? It helps. I have some thoughts. I have had them too. Zhou Heng calmed down and thought carefully about how he felt when he was with Tina. He didn't know if this was the feeling of love, but it was true that he had never had this feeling when facing Bella or Kelly. This is a feeling that belongs only to him, towards Tina. Liao Haomiao came to Zhou Heng, patted him on the shoulder and said, "I can sense that you definitely like Tina. The reason you haven't realized it yet is because you've never really liked someone before. Is it? Yeah, if you don't believe me, let's just wait and see. After a while, you will be able to know for sure that you really like Tina. But by then, it's not certain whether Tina still likes you. You have to think about it carefully." After Liao Haomiao finished speaking, he turned around and prepared to leave. Before leaving, he left another message. "Remember what I said. Either accept it or keep your distance. It's better for both of you." After finishing speaking, Liao Haomiao left the place. Zhou Heng looked at his back as he left, deep in thought. He had to say that this conversation was of great significance to him. It helped him resolve many doubts and also helped him to confirm his own thoughts a little. He just didn't know whether this feeling was love or not. He knew that Liao Haomiao was right. The reason he couldn't figure it out was because he had never truly liked someone. "Even if I feel like someone, I won't care." Zhou Heng stood there, thinking for a long time before taking a step forward and preparing to go home. He didn't know how to face Tina when he got home. Did she really want to confess just now? Will she confess again after she returns? When Zhou Heng turned the corner, he suddenly stopped and stood there in a daze. He saw a familiar person sitting on the familiar steps. On that day more than 10 days ago, it was a rainy night. On the steps under the street lamp, I met the girl who was crying very sadly. And today, same night, same place, same people. However, it didn't rain today, and the girl wasn't crying. The past scene seemed to be right in front of her eyes, but at this moment, Tina was sitting on the steps, holding the key to her house in her hand, looking at the mobile phone she gave her, with a happy smile on her face. When Zhou Heng saw this scene, his eyes flickered and he pursed his lips slightly, as if he was smiling. He knew that helping Tina was the best thing he had ever done. "Why didn't you go home?" Zhou Heng opened his mouth and shouted. Tina heard the voice. She quickly raised her head and saw Zhou Heng, smiling gently and gracefully. She quickly stood up, trotted over to Zhou Heng, and said, "I'll wait for you. Are you okay?" "It's okay. What can I do? Let's go home." Zhou Heng and Tina continued to walk home. Tina asked curiously. What did he talk to you about? Nothing, just chatting. Oh. Tina did not ask any further questions and followed Zhou, and they went home together. After returning home, Zhou sat on a chair as soon as he entered the door, looking like he was taking a rest. But his eyes would glance towards Tina from time to time. Call? After a while, he exhaled, looked at Tina and asked, what are you going to say on the way back? Ah. Tina raised her head and looked at Zhou face. She was stunned for a moment. Unexpectedly, Zhou still remembered it. She originally thought that Zhou would not care. She originally wanted to confess her feelings at that time, but was interrupted, and after returning, Zhou seemed to be thinking about something. If Zhou was thinking about something important, it would not be a good idea to disturb him at this time, and confessing to him would not be a wise choice. So she didn't mention it again, planning to wait for the right time to talk about it. I didn't expect Zhou to ask. Well, it's nothing. I just want to ask, what do you want to eat for dinner? I'll make it for you. Tina stood up and walked towards the kitchen. She didn't know what was wrong with her. Zhou had taken the initiative to bring up the topic, creating an opportunity for her, but now she was too embarrassed to say it out loud, because she always felt that now was not a good time, and if she said it out loud, the effect would definitely not be very good. She wanted that particularly suitable opportunity, just like the way back just now. It was particularly quiet and the atmosphere between them was very good. However, just as she was about to walk to the kitchen and pass by Zhou suddenly reached out, grabbed Tina's wrist, and stopped her. Tina's eyes widened in surprise, but she didn't turn around or say anything. Because her mind was completely blank and her heart was in a mess, Zhou could feel Tina's body trembling slightly. He asked softly, "This isn't what you want to say, is it?" Although the sound was small, it seemed to explode in Tina's heart, making her heart beat faster. "Oh no," she answered in a low voice, as soft as a mosquito. If the room wasn't very quiet, Zhou wouldn't have been able to hear it at all. "Then tell me, what do you really want to say?" Zhou deep voice made Tina's face turn red, and her ears also turned red. She didn't dare to say it in the first place, and Zhou behavior made it even more difficult for her to speak. But since Zhou had already asked this, she couldn't lie again, could she? She couldn't do it, and she wouldn't do it at all. What should I do now? Should I delay it? Make up an excuse to keep it a little suspenseful and tell him another day? While Tina was still struggling with her thoughts, Zhou stood up slowly, but he still held Tina's wrist and did not let go. Tina still didn't look back, but she knew Zhou had stood up, which made her a little nervous because she didn't know what Zhou would do next. At this time, Zhou opened his lips slightly and asked softly, "Can't you tell me? Or, don't want to tell me?" Tina's body trembled slightly. She heard Zhou tone. Not only was there confusion, but also a sense of loss, and Tina even heard a little bit of grievance. This was the first time she heard Zhou speak in such a tone, and it struck her heart. It seemed to have touched the weakest part of her heart. That was the fatal blow that broke through her psychological defenses, and she no longer had the ability to resist. Hiss whoosh. Tina took a deep breath and suddenly turned around. Her eyes were firm and serious. "Zhou, I know it's a bit shameless for me to say this, because everything I have gained now is given to me by you, Bella, and Mom. But I have set my sights on you. I have nothing and am unworthy of you, but I still want to be brave for once. Zhou, I like you. Will you be my boyfriend?" Chapter 87. Otherwise, I might make you unhappy without even knowing it. Tina finished speaking. The room fell into a deathly silence, so quiet that one could almost hear the echo of Tina's voice. Zhou expression was particularly dull. He knew in advance what Tina wanted to say, most likely a confession. However, when this true confession hit him, although he was mentally prepared, he still couldn't resist it. It felt like it had struck his heart, or even his soul. His mind was blank now, and he seemed to have lost the ability to think. But my heart was constantly screaming, "Ah! Is this what it feels like to be confessed to? Is this feeling real?" Tina determined eyes and serious expression seemed to fade away quickly after she finished speaking. Instead, there is a blush on the face that cannot be concealed. She lowered her head, looking timid and embarrassed on the surface, but in her heart, she was happy. She finally spoke out her inner thoughts. If it were my old self, I would never say it out loud even if I were beaten to death, right? Now that I can say it, it proves that I have changed. I have changed my previous weak character.
That?
After a while, Jo-hung spoke. When Tina heard the voice, she immediately raised her head and looked at Jo-hung with expectant eyes. She didn't know what the result of her confession would be, but even if the result was not ideal, she would not be disappointed or discouraged. Because from the beginning, she confessed with the idea that she would fail. She had a clear understanding of her current situation. She lived under someone else's roof and had nothing except her academic performance. And she also thought that she had no advantages that could attract Jo-hung. Therefore, although she had expectations, she was already prepared for failure. I just hope that after the failure, Jo-hung's relationship with her will remain the same and not deteriorate. You really like me? Are you kidding? Jo-hung kept blinking, as if his eyes were dry, and he spoke haltingly and hesitantly. It's true. I'm not kidding. Tina answered without hesitation, which finally convinced Jo-hung. But he still couldn't understand it. After all, he was a person who was often laughed at in high school. He had been a laughingstock for 2 years. His sense of existence was very low, and his academic performance was at the bottom. It could be said that he was very poor. How could someone like such a person? The person who likes him is actually the monitor who ranks first in the class. Not only does he have excellent grades, but his personality is also well-liked by everyone. He is a person that everyone in the class trusts. Not to mention her looks, she is pursued by half of the boys in the class, and there are even more suitors from other classes. It's hard to imagine that I can be liked by such a person. Is it because I helped her? Me. Jo-hung let go of Tina's wrist and took a step back. His throat seemed to be stuck with a bone, and he couldn't answer. It was like I wanted to say something, but didn't know how to start. I was as nervous as if I was performing on stage for the first time. Tina narrowed her eyes, smiled faintly, and said softly, "It's okay. You don't have to answer me. I know you can't bear to reject me. I'll go cook for you. After dinner, let's start studying. Just pretend that what happened just now didn't happen. Don't let it affect your mood for studying." After saying that, Tina turned around and prepared to go to the kitchen. No. Wait a minute. Jo-hung seemed very anxious and quickly called Tina. Tina was startled. She didn't know what happened to Jo-hung. She turned around and looked at him blankly. Jo-hung gasped for breath, feeling that his heart had been blocked in his throat. The next second, he swallowed. His Adam's apple moved, and he spoke. "It's just, I don't have any experience in love. Although, I know you don't have any experience either, but I want to say, if I did something wrong, please be sure to point it out clearly, and I will try to correct it. Otherwise, I might make you unhappy without even realizing it." Tina was stunned for a moment. Her eyes suddenly widened, her slightly thin lips trembling slightly. She took a step forward, blinked her jade-like eyes, and spoke in disbelief. You mean, Jo-hung nodded, took a deep breath, and exhaled slowly. "I want to be your boyfriend." After Jo-hung finished speaking, time seemed to freeze at this moment. Tina suddenly stood there in shock. The next second, her lips moved and tears suddenly flashed in her eyes. Jo-hung panicked instantly. Before he could say anything, bright tear marks were already on his rosy cheeks. No. Did I do something wrong? Don't cry. Jo-hung asked anxiously, not knowing where to put his hands, and his whole body seemed to be at a loss as to what position to take. His face was full of panic, and he looked around. He really hoped that there was some magical tool nearby that could stop Tina's tears immediately. Tina saw this scene. She thought of the first day she came to Jo-hung's house. "I cried in front of Jo-hung, but he didn't react like this at the time. I blamed him and spoke harshly. Seeing Zhou Heng's reaction now, Tina couldn't help laughing. She shed tears and chuckled with her hands covering her mouth. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm fine. I'm just crying tears of joy. Ah, you scared me. Zhou Heng heaved a sigh of relief, as if a huge rock had fallen from his heart. He thought he had just been with Tina and accidentally made her cry. Next, Zhou Heng just stood there like a log, because he didn't know what to do now. You already have a girlfriend? Just like that. You already have a girlfriend? And it's Tina. Tina, the goddess in the eyes of so many boys, is so much better than the Kelly I pursued for 2 years. I haven't even got a bicycle yet, but now I get a sports car? What should I do next? Should I set off firecrackers to celebrate? Or should I call my mother to tell her about it? Or, at this time, Zhou Heng saw Tina wiping her tears and realized what he should do. At least he should hand Tina a piece of paper. Why was he standing there like a zombie? Then, Zhou Heng quickly took out a tissue and handed it to Tina. Give it, wipe it off, and stop crying. Tina took it, wiped the tears from her eyes, and then smiled happily. You must be hungry. I'll go make you some food. You can take a rest for a while. Zhou Heng was quick-witted and quickly stepped forward to stop Tina and said, Ah no, today, I'll cook. You go and have a rest? Chapter 88. Actually, it can be the same as before. In the end, the two of them didn't give in to each other and squeezed into the kitchen together, preparing to cook together. This is also the first time that the two of them appear in the kitchen together. Zhou Heng lowered his head to wash the vegetables, and he seemed to be washing them very carefully. Tina was cutting vegetables with a kitchen knife. She was very skilled with the knife, but today, for some reason, she cut the vegetables thick and thin. Moreover, her face would occasionally flush with a cherry-like blush, and her eyes would secretly glance at Zhou Heng every few seconds. Every time she glanced, the blush on her face would become more intense. Zhou Heng realized something was wrong, and quickly put down the food in his hand and snatched the kitchen knife from Tina. Let me do it. Let me do it. It would be bad if I cut my hand. Zhou Heng looked at Tina's fair and slender fingers and thought that if he was left with a scar on them, he would be a sinner. Then, I'll go wash the vegetables. Oh no. No, no, no. Washing vegetables hurts your hands. I'll do it. I'll do it. Zhou Heng stopped Tina from touching the dishes. Injured hand? Tina blinked in confusion and looked at the vegetables, not understanding why washing vegetables would hurt her hands. There is only a cucumber in there. You will feel something when you wash off the thorns. But does that have anything to do with hurting your hand? Tina felt that Zhou Heng was exaggerating a bit, but she was still very happy in her heart because she knew that Zhou Heng was worried about her. But I have been in the kitchen so many times, so there is no need to worry, right? Why is Zhou Heng so cautious now that they are together? It's like he is being extra careful with himself. Are you afraid that it might break accidentally? Tina looked at Zhou Heng's serious profile, and for some reason, the corners of her mouth slightly raised uncontrollably. She had never seen Zhou Heng in this state. In the past, Zhou Heng always gave her the impression of being very mature and calm, and very reliable. She felt very safe when she was with Zhou Heng. But now, she also likes Zhou Heng very much. She thinks he is so cute. Tina reached out her hand, poked Zhou Heng's cheek with her finger, and said softly, Okay, I'll leave the kitchen to you. I'll go clean the house. Then, Tina left the kitchen. Zhou Heng did not look back, but the kitchen knife in his hand stopped. After a while, his ears seemed to turn a little red. Tina cleaned up the living room, bedroom, and bathroom. Since they were usually very clean, it took little effort to clean up. After cleaning, the whole house looks brand new. At this time, Zhou Heng also prepared the meal and served it on the table. Zhou Heng was about to call Tina's name, but suddenly realized that given their current relationship, wouldn't it seem a little strange if he called her by her full name? Well, it's time to eat. In the end, Zhou Heng could only whisper, without any title, because he really couldn't pronounce those familiar names. Okay, here I come. Tina didn't care, nodded, and happily came to the dining table. Zhou Heng served Tina rice, took the bowl and chopsticks, and poured her a cup of warm water, which made Tina feel a little embarrassed. She didn't expect that being in a formal relationship would have such a lasting effect on Jo-hung. Jo-hung really wasn't lying. He seemed really afraid of doing something wrong. Tina really wanted to tell Jo-hung that there was no need to do this, and there was no need to treat her like this. This would only make her feel embarrassed, and it would be different from their usual relationship. You don't have to worry about anything. I will never be angry with you, nor will I think that what you did is wrong. Even if we are together, we can still be the same as before, Tina whispered, and every word reached Jo-hung's ears, making Jo-hung a little puzzled. What's wrong with me? Am I not the same as usual? Then what am I like normally? Although he didn't quite understand, he still nodded obediently and said, Okay, all right. The two began to eat. Maybe it was a psychological effect, but Tina felt that today's meal was particularly delicious. She already thought that the food Jo-hung cooked was delicious, but today she thought it was even better. After dinner, Tina cleaned up the dishes as usual. Jo-hung was not idle either. He helped Tina clean up. In the past, he would have ignored everything and gone to study. He now wondered why he was so selfish. What would happen if he helped Tina clean up? Why didn't he help? Was it really that little time that he needed to study? Those few extra minutes wouldn't earn him any more points. Now Jo-hung knows that he did not do well in many aspects in the past. Even so, Tina has no complaints and even likes himself this way. After everything is packed, Jo-hung sat in front of the study table, took out his books, and prepared to start studying. Although a lot of things happened today, it did not affect his study progress. At this time, Tina stood beside Jo-hung holding her pajamas and asked softly, Do you want to take a shower first? No, you. You wash first, you wash first. I will learn first. Okay, I'll wash faster then. Tina nodded and walked into the bathroom. After a while, the sound of water came from the bathroom. Jo-hung, who was still doing the test paper, started spinning his pen and shaking his legs. From time to time, I glanced towards the bathroom. What's the situation? Jo-hung muttered softly. He felt a little restless inside, and beads of sweat oozed out of his forehead. I am extremely distracted and my attention always seems to drift towards the bathroom. Tina has showered here, right? She takes a shower almost every day. But was I like this before? Obviously not. I never paid attention to that place before. But why is it like this today? Not only did my sight drift in that direction, but even in my mind, a hazy picture began to form. He stared at the bathroom door unconsciously. It's as if you can see the vague black shadow reflected, showing a graceful figure. Snapped. The next second, a slap hit Jo-hung's face hard, and it was he who slapped him. Weakling. You can't even control this? You're trash. He cursed himself in a low voice, then forced his attention to the book and began to study with full concentration. About half an hour later, Tina came out of the bathroom in her pajamas. When he saw Jo-hung sitting there, he found that something was wrong with him. What happened to your face? Chapter 89. Oh my, what am I so nervous about? I was bitten by a mosquito. Mosquito? A mosquito as big as a palm? Kick. Tina turned her head and chuckled, then slowly walked over and sat next to Jo-hung. As soon as he sat down, Jo-hung felt a faint fragrance entering his nostrils. Jo-hung quickly lowered his head and stared at the book, trying not to let his thoughts run wild. Tina was sitting nearby and seemed to have noticed something. Her senses were still very sharp, and she could tell at a glance that Jo-hung's condition had changed. In the past, he had no expression on his face and was very focused when studying, as if nothing in the outside world would affect him. But today, he was making a lot of small movements. His tongue would occasionally touch his cheek, his eyes were wandering, and there were beads of sweat on his forehead. Tina was most worried about happened. She confessed her love to Jo-hung on a premise. If this premise was violated, she would rather never confess her love to Jo-hung. She pursed her lips, a look of hesitation appeared on her face, and after a moment, she spoke with difficulty. Jo-hung, if being with me will affect your studies and your normal life, then we should? No, definitely not. Jo-hung shook his head and denied it, not letting Tina continue. He knew that his current situation was something he had never experienced before, and he found it very interesting. Both his mood and state made him feel fresh. It was like adding a lot of color to his monotonous world. In the past, only games could do this. However, I didn't expect that the freshness Tina brought to me would far exceed the game. Although these feelings made him unable to stop, they would definitely not affect other things. He can even temporarily give up his favorite game in order not to affect his studies, so he can do the same when it comes to dating. Tina raised her thin lips slightly, with a gentle smile, placed her hand on the back of Zhou Heng's hand, and said softly, "Well, I believe you." Afterwards, Zhou Heng briefly forgot about their relationship and asked Tina to teach him how to do the exercises as usual. Both of them were very serious during the learning process and seemed to want to prove that changes in the relationship would not affect anything. By late at night, Zhou Heng knew that he had learned enough and it was time for him to take a shower and go to bed. He went into the bathroom and prepared to take a shower. Tina returned to the bedroom first. She looked at the quilt in the middle of the bed, thoughtfully. That was their partition, dividing the big bed into two sides, each sleeping on one side. But now, their relationship doesn't need to be like this anymore. As a boyfriend and girlfriend, if there is a quilt between them, won't it create a distance between them? So, after a brief thought, Tina moved the quilt in the middle. Looking at the big bed in front of her, Tina's cheeks flushed slightly, because in her heart she actually wanted to take one of the pillows away. In this case, can they both sleep on the same pillow? That would be the true meaning of sleeping in the same bed, right? But no matter how much she thought about it, she didn't intend to do that. She and Zhou Heng had just been together. What if she did that and made Zhou Heng unhappy? Tina was lying on the bed. The bedroom and the bathroom were separated by only a wall. Even at the head of the bed, she could hear the noise from the bathroom next door. In her mind, she couldn't help but start imagining Zhou Heng's figure. She could only imagine what Zhou Heng looked like when he was working out. Now that we are together, can I touch those muscles myself? She had wanted to touch him for a long time, but she had never dared to do so. Now that she had a legitimate identity, it was okay to touch him, right? Goo. As she thought about it, Tina's throat moved and she swallowed. Her face turned red, and she immediately pulled up the quilt to cover herself. Why am I just imagining nonsense? Tina rolled around on the huge bed and finally rolled herself up in the quilt. She quickly sobered herself up. If she continued to let her wild thoughts run wild, he would definitely get worse. She was already flattered to be with Zhou Heng, so how could she dare to make any other requests? If my pride caused Zhou Heng to dislike me and we ended up breaking up, I would definitely regret it and cry bitterly. Correct? Tina poked her little head out from under the quilt and suddenly thought of something. Should I tell Bella the good news? She has helped a lot in allowing me to be with Zhou Heng, and I should repay her. Tina took out her phone, opened the chat interface with Bella, and typed a few words. Zhou Heng and I are together. No. Tina deleted and wrote and deleted, and thought for a long time. She felt that she couldn't express her feelings on the phone. So in the end, I decided to wait until after school tomorrow to tell Bella in person. This way is better. At this time, Tina heard the sound of water in the bathroom stop, which meant that Zhou Heng had finished his shower. She immediately put down her phone and wanted to appear natural. Lying down? Or sitting up? Or pretending to sleep? No, that's definitely not right. Oh my God, why am I so nervous? Tina hid her head under the quilt again, blushing and whispering. Why did she feel like she was sleeping with Zhou Heng for the first time? The only difference was that she was only worried and scared the first time, but this time, she was completely shy and a little excited. They sleep together every night, but today their relationship is different. What will happen? What will Zhou Heng do? Tina secretly thought in her heart that no matter what Zhou Heng did, she would not refuse. Crack? After a while, the bedroom door opened and Zhou Heng walked in. Zhou Heng saw Tina lying on the bed and couldn't help but feel a little confused. Why is she covered in the quilt? Is it cold in this room? Tina, who was in the quilt, cursed herself for being a coward. She didn't know what expression or demeanor to use when facing Zhou Heng, So she hid herself in the quilt. Zhou Heng thought Tina had fallen asleep, but when he saw the quilt was still moving, he knew she was not asleep. Then he also noticed that the quilt that served as a partition in the middle of the bed had been removed. Here is a cup of warm water. I've put it here for you. And are you sleepy now? Do you want to eat some fruit? I'll go wash some for you. Zhou Heng placed a cup of warm water on the table next to Tina and asked softly. Tina was stunned in the quilt. Then she closed her eyes tightly and bit her lips lightly. The suppressed emotions in her heart almost burst out. She is particularly puzzled now. Didn't they just get together? Why are you so nice to yourself? This will make me feel like I can't bear it. Chapter 90. My dear, you are so nice. Tina carefully poked her head out from under the quilt, revealing a pair of clear eyes. No, thank you. It's no trouble. She didn't know how to answer Zhou Heng. It turned out that when someone was too nice to you, you would really be at a loss. Okay, then, tell me if you want anything and I'll get it for you. Zhou Heng nodded. He stood beside his bed and was about to go to bed, but he hesitated. Fortunately, he calmed down in time, slowly went to bed, and lay on the bed. Now that the quilt was gone, Zhou Heng felt that he would touch Tina if he raised his hand. But if I stay too far away from Tina, it won't be good either, as if I dislike her. It's too close, but I feel embarrassed. Tina whispered, You don't have to be so nice to me. I don't know how to repay you. Zhou Heng raised his eyebrows, somewhat puzzled, and after a few seconds of silence, he spoke. I don't think this is being nice to you. This is a small matter, not worth mentioning. Besides, it's only natural to be nice to your girlfriend. Exclamation point. Tina heard the words, her girlfriend. She couldn't hold it anymore and turned around quickly. With her back to Zhou Heng, her face flushed red. How could I resist hearing these words coming from Zhou Heng's mouth? No, I have to fight back. You have to do something and say something too. I was the one who confessed my feelings to you in the first place, and now that we're finally together, why am I being so shy? Tina turned around, raised her eyes and looked at Zhou Heng. Her eyes were bright and clear, like shining black jade. After a long silence, Tina slowly spoke, her voice as gentle as clear water waves. My dear, you are so nice. Hiss. Zhou Heng's eyes widened immediately. He took a deep breath, and his head tilted back uncontrollably. Boom! There was a wall behind him, and the loud noise was the sound of the back of his head hitting the wall. Depend on. Zhou Heng gritted his teeth and covered his head. His reaction just now was too extreme, and he almost died from the pain. Tina was startled and quickly approached Zhou Heng, hugged him in her arms, and stretched out her hand to rub Zhou Heng's head. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. How is it? Does it hurt? She gently rubbed Zhou Heng's cheeks, her eyes full of heartache. She admitted that she was a little bit mischievous just now, but only a little bit. After all, she wanted to fight back against Zhou Heng. But I didn't expect Zhou Heng's reaction to be so intense. I shouldn't have played like this earlier. It would be so painful if I hit my head. The sound was so loud just now, it felt like it was going to knock a hole in the wall. No. It doesn't hurt anymore. Zhou Heng pursed his lips, closed his eyes, and whispered. Because at this moment, his entire face was less than a finger's width away from Tina's proud features. A little closer. I'm about to bury my face in it. All you'll be greeted with is the aroma that hits you in the face. At this time, he could no longer feel any pain. He only felt the blood quickly filling up. Anyway, it's not a congestion in the brain. Tina rubbed Zhou Heng for a while before letting go. She looked at Zhou Heng's face and asked, How is it? Does it still hurt? No, it's okay. Zhou Heng then slowly opened his eyes. Otherwise, he would not have dared to open his eyes just now. If this happened in the past, it would have hurt for at least half an hour, right? As Tina rubbed it, is her hand magical? Or is there magic in love? Zhou Heng looked at Tina and found that her face was full of guilt. It seems that she is blaming herself for hitting the wall. In fact, it was just my own carelessness and it had nothing to do with her. I'm fine. I don't blame you. Don't think too much. Zhou Heng said softly. Then, He carefully raised his hand and gently scratched Tina's face with his fingers. Zhou Heng was surprised by the smooth and elastic skin. How nice it would be if he could just pinch it. He would probably get addicted. Tina finally smiled, nodded, and responded. After a while, Zhou Heng turned off the lights. It was time for them to go to bed. They lay in bed, covered with their own quilts, but neither of them could close their eyes. Tina repeatedly recalled what happened today, especially when she confessed her love to Zhou Heng. Every time she thought about it, her heart would be very excited. She repeatedly told herself that this was not a dream. This was real. She was really with Zhou Heng. Zhou Heng was sorting out his feelings. He knew that he must be weird now and different from his previous self. The reason is that he is now experiencing a relationship he has never experienced before, that is, love. Everything is unknown and full of freshness, which really makes him unable to stop. Do I really have such a good girlfriend? When I go to school tomorrow, can I openly admit my relationship with Tina? He could imagine the envious looks those people were giving him. Although he never cares about other people's questioning eyes, he cares a lot about other people's envious and admiring eyes. Because it feels great. I can. Hearing Tina's voice, Zhou Heng responded subconsciously, as if responding a second later would be a mistake. Tina's voice was very low and hesitant, but she still spoke slowly. Can I hold you while you sleep? Of course we can. Zhou Heng nodded and responded. Then, he turned sideways and rushed to Tina, facing her. Tina also put her hands up and hugged Zhou Heng's waist. She unconsciously pressed her head down and pressed it against Zhou Heng's chest. This is like hiding in Zhou Heng's arms, which can give her a great sense of security. Zhou Heng also raised his hand and gently hugged Tina. The two of them hugged each other just like they did that night. However, this time, Tina no longer worried that Zhou Heng would find out, so she didn't have to go to great lengths to pretend to be asleep and could do so calmly. After a while, Tina opened her eyes and whispered, "Your heartbeat is so fast." "Ah, sorry, did I disturb your sleep? How can I make it stop?" "No. How can I make it slower?"
No.
Tina stretched out her other hand and gently placed it on Zhou Heng's heart, as if to feel the beating. "I love so much." Chapter 91 The Joy is written all over your faces. Zhou Heng and Tina didn't know when they fell asleep. When sleepiness came over me, my eyes closed uncontrollably. The next morning, Zhou Heng was the first to open his eyes. He usually woke up early, then got up to make breakfast and lunch to take to school. Zhou Heng snorted, and just as he was about to move his body, he suddenly felt something was wrong, as if he couldn't move. Tina was very close to him in his arms, breathing evenly, and had not woken up yet. Oh, right. Zhou Heng thought about what happened yesterday. It was something he had never experienced in his life. Until now, it all seems like a dream. Well, at this moment, Tina, who felt Zhou Heng's movements, also moved, and moved her whole body closer to his arms, as if she wanted to curl up her whole body in Zhou Heng's arms. Seeing her like this, and then looking at her sleeping face, Zhou Heng's heartbeat accelerated uncontrollably. No wonder Liao Haomiao said that he absolutely liked Tina. I have more or less felt it now, and I have a little understanding of what it feels like to like someone. Although Zhou Heng should get up and cook now, but in this situation, if he gets up, he will definitely wake up Tina. Moreover, he was reluctant to get up right now. He wanted to feel the feeling of holding Tina in his arms again. Zhou Heng just stared at Tina sleeping, as if he couldn't see enough. He also hoped that time would stop just like that so that he could enjoy this kind of time more. However, the reality is that time passes quickly, and soon, Tina's alarm clock rang. Tina slowly opened her hazy eyes and looked up, and saw Zhou Heng's nervous expression. His expression seemed as if he was worried. Today was a new day. Would Tina be angry about what happened last night? Because the decisions you make at night may be regretted the next morning. But it was obvious that Zhou Heng's worries were unnecessary. After Tina looked at Zhou Heng, she narrowed her eyes and smiled coquettishly. "Good morning." Tina had just woken up, and her voice was a little hoarse, But what Zhou Hong heard was an extremely charming voice, and he felt his whole body numb. Ah, good. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Tina smiled widely and whispered in Zhou Heng's ear, Great. That's good. Tina also reluctantly left Zhou Heng's arms, and the two got up from the bed together. Zhou Heng glanced at the time. Fortunately, there was enough time for him to make breakfast and lunch, but he had to make them simpler. Tina would not stand by and watch. After washing up, she went to the kitchen to help Zhou Heng. Zhou Heng did not refuse. If they worked together, it would save a lot of time. When the two were making lunch, they each made the other's portion in tacit understanding, and as a result, you can see that each of their lunches is better than the other. After packing everything, the two of them were ready to go out. Walk out of the house, take the elevator. In the elevator, Tina lowered her head and glanced at Zhou Heng's hand. The next second, she carefully reached out her hand and gently held half of Zhou Heng's palm. Zhou Heng's hands trembled slightly, and he didn't react for a moment. When he looked at Tina, he found that she lowered her head. Nothing was said, but it seemed that nothing needed to be said. Then, Zhou Heng directly held Tina's entire palm without concealing it. Tina raised her head, glanced at Zhou Heng's profile, and smiled. The two held hands and went to school together. When they reached the school gate, they separated their hands. After all, the school does not allow students to have romantic relationships. If they are caught, they will probably be punished. After arriving at the classroom, they returned to their seats. After Zhou Heng sat down, he looked at Bella and said, Let me tell you something. Before Zhou Heng could speak, Bella took the lead in guessing. You and Tina are together? Huh? How did you know? Did she tell you? No, I guessed. Both of you have such joy written all over your faces. Bella washed her face, removed her makeup, and changed her clothes. Now she is wearing a sports vest, showing her clearly visible abdominal lines. After all, she still has to participate in the competition after the performance. It can be said that this sports meet is the one she feels most involved in among all the school sports meets she has experienced since she was a child. Bella unwrapped a lollipop, put the lollipop in her mouth, sat there, and began to think about what had just happened. Now the opening ceremony has ended, and the competition items have started to be checked in one after another. She still had time to complete her projects, so she could take a break. Why are you already dressed? Just then, Bella heard a voice, turned around and found that it was Tina who came here, but she looked obviously a little lost, with a mobile phone in her hand. It's over. Why don't you change it? It's hurting my waist. Bella took out another lollipop from her pocket, walked over, and stuffed it directly into Tina's mouth. You're late. You look so beautiful. I wanted to come over and take some photos with you. Tina walked over and sat with Bella, and reluctantly put her phone back into her pocket. It's okay to take pictures like this, as long as you look good. Bella took out her cell phone and took a photo of the two of them when Tina was unprepared. At least let me prepare myself. It will definitely look ugly in the photos. How is that possible? Look at it yourself. Isn't it beautiful? Then take a few more pictures. After the two girls had enough fun indoors, they prepared to go out because Zhou Heng would have a game in a while and they wanted to go watch. After the two of them arrived at the playground, Bella couldn't help but frown. She was quite sensitive and noticed that countless eyes were looking at them as soon as they came out. Tina was still unaware and was looking at the photos she and Bella had just taken on her phone. It wasn't until a few people blocked the way that Tina's attention was drawn. She and Bella stood there, looking up with a bewildered look on their faces. There were 4 or 5 boys in front of me. They looked like they were in the first or second year of high school, but they all looked unruly. I guess smoking is not allowed in school, otherwise each of them would have come here with a cigarette in their mouth. One of the boys stood up and slowly approached the two of them, holding a cell phone in his hand. 2 seniors, let's get to know each other. Can we add each other as friends? Whether it's the tone or the accent, it's full of teasing, which makes it impossible for others not to misunderstand. At this time, Bella stepped forward, slightly blocked Tina's body, frowned slightly, and said, Sorry, she has a boyfriend and doesn't want to add other boys as friends, and I don't want to add them either. Tina looked at Bella very touched. Every time she encountered such a thing, Bella would stand in front of her. She probably thinks that it is difficult for her to refuse others because of her personality. That was indeed the case before. She was embarrassed to refuse others, but now, she is no longer so weak. I thought the boys would give up, but it was obvious that they were unwilling to give up this opportunity. The boy did not retreat but advanced, insisting, "Oh, I just want to make friends. It's okay if I have a boyfriend." "Yeah, we don't have any bad intentions. We just want to learn from you seniors." The other boys followed suit, looking like they would not give up until they added their friends. Tina bit her lip, then stepped forward, stood in front of Bella, and said firmly, "I told you not to add it. Don't you understand?" Tina's words made the boys stand still. Obviously, they didn't expect that this seemingly weak girl could refuse so firmly. They thought that as long as they could get the girl with short hair, they would be done. Bella was also a little surprised. After a moment, the corners of her mouth slightly raised, as if she felt the change in Tina's personality. She was no longer the person who needed her protection. After being stunned for a few seconds, the boys looked at each other and smiled evilly, as if they didn't take Tina's words seriously at all. "Ha ha ha, miss you. Hey, my girlfriend is asking you guys a question. Did you answer? Did you understand what she said?" Just then, a deep voice came from behind the boys. Tina and Bella looked in the direction of the voice, and when they saw the person coming, they immediately smiled and their brows relaxed, as if they had found a life-saving straw. "Ah." Several boys frowned and slowly turned their heads to look. But when he saw the man behind him, he was so scared that he trembled all over and couldn't help but swear. Oh my God! They had never seen such a terrifying person in this school. Standing behind them was like a wall. They couldn't tell whether it was a human or a humanoid monster. Moreover, Zhou Hong seemed very angry at this time. His face was gloomy, and veins on his arms were bulging, making him look particularly scary. Tina immediately pulled Bella and came behind Zhou Hong, hiding behind him. Bella looked at the boys provocatively, stuck out her tongue, and looked very proud. They were immediately furious, but they couldn't afford to offend the giant beast in front of them, so they could only lower their posture and say, "Brother, we didn't mean to mess with your girlfriend. We misunderstood. We just wanted to add that girl as our friend." Bella behind Zhou Hong, thinking, just take care of your own girlfriend, right? There's no reason for you to care about other people, right? Bella put away her smug look, hid behind Zhou Hong, stretched out her hand and pinched the corner of Zhou Heng's clothes. Zhou Hong frowned, crossed his arms, raised his chin, and said, "That's my sister. If she says she doesn't want to join, then she doesn't want to join. Don't you understand?" Hearing Zhou Heng's words, Bella nodded with satisfaction and whispered behind Zhou Hong, "Well, you are worthy of being the shielding general I recommended to the court. You did a good job. I will reward you handsomely later." Tina also laughed softly with her hands covering her mouth. "With Zhou Hong behind you, there is nothing to worry about." "Ah, are you serious, buddy? You don't look alike? How can she be your sister? You can't be lying to us, right?" Bella behind him. At this moment, he suddenly felt his collar tighten. His feet were empty, and his body became lighter. His eyeballs almost popped out. His eyes were full of disbelief. I was picked up like a chicken? And he looked so relaxed, as if he was a supermarket shopping bag in his hand. The other boys took 2 steps back in fear, although their buddy was a little thin. But it's not like they could just lift it up with one hand. This is the first time they've seen this happen in real life. The boy who was picked up swallowed and looked at Zhou Hong in front of him, hesitatingly saying, "Brother, I was wrong. I will leave right away."